Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the boy in the team in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 31, Trouble Grows as Crimson and White walk. Fainting because of some killing intent, a voice mocked. Really? What was that about, Kakashi nii? Dad got Shin-chan up to Chiryunin? That's so unfair. So the dead last actually became a Chiryunin before all of us. That was Hibachi's voice, wasn't it? There's too many people around here, he needs air. That clearly was Yojo's snappish tone. Out, all of you. He could hear the moving of steps. Suzuki-kun. That was Ami's screech, which apparently came from outside a dingy room he found himself in, the moment he cracked his eyes open. We are in Tajuna's house, Yojo said firmly, appearing at the corner of his eyes. They told me you collapsed after meeting with the Kirigakure shinobi. Ah, yeah, he muttered, closing his eyes and letting the deep pitch-black darkness of his eyelids overcome his sight. If only he could sleep through the entire thing. You held your ground, Yojo continued. It was stupid, Shinku muttered. Stupid. Stupid. Completely stupid, he hissed out, I'm an idiot. You kept your cool? I challenged in a verbal spar. Jounin, he snarled back, that is the epitome of stupidity. Maybe, but you reacted well to the stress. Your other teammates froze from the killing intent. A lot of good it did me, Shinku bitterly chuckled, a lot of good. You should be surprised by how rare it is, Yojo commented. A lot of shinobi take months to properly avoid freezing up in front of their fears. You even took a step forward. It is impressive. It was reckless, not impressive, Shinku muttered. I'm the dead last of the class, Uzuki-sensei. Nothing I do will ever be impressive. It will be reckless, stupid, done badly, it will never impress anyone. You're not used to receiving praise. Yojo Uzuki stated the fact, rather than asking it as a question. Softly, she added in a lower tone. You can refuse orders if they're suicidal, you know? You didn't have to play the Chiryunin when Kakashi asked you to. I'm not good at many things, Shinku replied, but of all the stats at the academy working with others was the highest. It's not difficult, he chuckled. One just needs to forget being right, and accept the orders from others. Once the hierarchy is established, you just go from there, right? Those are pretty deep thoughts for a child. That's reality, Shinku hissed back. You don't get to choose how you're born. You get to choose what you'll do with your life, but depending on how you're born, the road is only in one direction. Trying to go in another, that's an uphill battle you know you're bound to lose. So I was born to be an Umbu then, Yojo remarked dryly. Just like half the rest of the team I usually take missions with. I was born with the mask on, right? No, Shinku muttered, but had your parents been from Suna, would you have entered the Konoha's Umbu? Had your parents been from IWA, would you have even stepped into Konoha? His eyes snapped open, gazing at Yojo's own. We have control over a meager part of our lives. We do not control it and neither are we bound by it. Some have a larger width, others have a narrower one. You're not stupid, you know that. Yojo murmured. Shinku flinched. I know what I am, he replied bitterly. And intelligent is clearly not there. Very well, Yojo exhaled. Here, another chocolate chip found its way straight into Shinku's mouth. Eat chocolate. Shinku coughed, before swallowing the chip that nearly suffocated him. He gagged and then stood upright, thumping at his chest. What the? Another one. Another chocolate chip ended up in his mouth. Are you trying to kill me? One more. The moment the third one entered his mouth he had closed it, he could swear he had. Yojo nodded firmly. It's your destiny to be force-fed chocolate when your mood is down. Shinku gazed at her with half-narrowed eyes, while carefully munching on the chips in his mouth. He swallowed the treats then, before licking with his tongue the sides of his teeth and the top of his throat. Well, better now. Yojo remarked. Why are you doing this? I like to help others, she shrugged. Rest now, I'll have someone bring you dinner. I don't. It's your destiny to have dinner here. If you try and move from that bed, not even the Hokage will save you, Yojao stated firmly, narrowing her eyes on him. Understood. Shinku shuddered, before nodding as fast as possible. Hi. Good boy, and with that, another chip ended up in his mouth. What was he, a dog? Then the woman left and he slumped back down against the bed with his eyes looking upwards. A sound attracted his attention, coming from the window. He tensed, looking around quickly for whatever weapon he could use. The rattling of the window soon finished, as the lock went click. The window slid open next, and to Shinku's relief Fu quietly made her way inside after letting her wings disappear. Hey, she whispered. You're awake. She blinked before sitting down on the side of the bed and then falling down without a worry, landing right over his stomach. Ouch, yes, he mumbled. What happened? You fainted, of course, Fu stated plainly. You fainted and you were carried back by me at the speed of light. She giggled. You're fine now, right? She turned her head to gaze at him. Were her eyes glowing? How did she manage to make them glow? Why yeah, he acquiesced. I was just scared senseless, I suppose. I was ready to substitute you with a log, you know, Fu replied. That's why I held onto your neck. Shinku blinked, before smiling slightly. Thanks. That's what friends are there for. Fu exclaimed, before slowly rolling to the side of the bed and curling up in a ball. We're friends, right? Why yes. Good. She giggled, before gripping on his right arm. Promise not to be scared. Scared of what, exactly? Shinku asked wearily. You know how, well, I've got control over flesh-eating bugs, right? She replied. Well, I can track down people by implanting a bug in their skins, it's completely harmless, really. The little thing feeds on chakra and a bit of blood, and it doesn't procreate. No. No flesh-eating bug inside my body for as long as I draw breath. Isn't that? No. Shinku winced at the mental scream from his inner self. It releases pheromones which I can smell even miles away, so. She held onto his arm, opening the palm of his hand and letting her index finger move across it. She was nervously writing the word courage on the palm of it. Is it going to hurt? Shinku asked. Nope, not at all. Fu exclaimed, I'll place it on the back of your right hand, all right? So you'll always know it's there, and it will be a nice bright red, yep. Shinku felt her entire body shudder as she slowly opened her mouth, emitting from within it a small saliva-covered bug of a bright red shade. It made Shinku's skin crawl. That was disgusting. Holding his hand steady, Fu hummed to herself as the bug stilled over the back of his limb. Shinku held his breath and closed his eyes. It was going to hurt, he just knew it was going to. Done. It hadn't hurt. He flexed his hand. Nothing had changed, and then he gazed at it. There was a small red dot right in the center of the back of his hand. It was the size of a small grain of rice. When it turns black, it means I'm dead, by the way, Fu said with a sad smile. I always wanted someone to have one. You know, I thought I'd die without anyone ever being my friend, so I really wanted to make one, at least to have someone remember me once I'm dead. Why? Why what? Why are you talking like you're about to die? Because it can happen, Fu smiled brightly. And the Nanabe is transferred when the host is still alive after all, so I'm not going to die of old age anyway. That's how it is, Shinku-kun, Fu murmured, before gripping his hand and staring at the bright crimson shade of her flesh-eating bug now firmly nested in Shinku's limb. So I'm glad I made a friend before it happened. You could come to Konoha, Shinku muttered. That would be nice, but... She awkwardly gazed at him. The Nanabe is a weapon of Takigaku. I could come, but the Baijuya would have to remain behind, and extracting it kills the user. Oh, Fu muttered, before pushing her body further upwards, so that her head rested in the crane of his armpit. It's nice to have a friend, I said that how many times already? 4, or 5, Shinku replied quietly. And then Fu fell asleep, like a log. It was to her soft snoring that another voice rose. The jacket makes us a target, Shinku. It kept us safe. It makes us a target. It must be removed. But. Stop stuttering in your dim mind. Get rid of it. End of the story. But if I do, they read our bluff. They'll just come to show you pain now. Get rid of it. You'd have better luck going back to Taki together with the girl. What? She's a Jinhuriki, she's lonely, you can use her. For survival. We can use anyone, to survive. What are you talking about? No. That's to live or to die. There is no halfway measure of pity. You live or you die. Live or die. Live or die. Sacrifice or be sacrificed. White or black. Gray doesn't exist when we deal with your very life. Do I really think like that, deep down? Shinku, 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 let me ask you a question, all right? The voice was amused as it spoke, the words coming out in a sing-sung tone. You die unless you push someone in front of the line of fire of the enemy. Do you push someone else in front of the line of fire to survive? What question is that? Answer me. And no. That's. You're dead. Well, obviously, but you are dead. End of the games. End of the Shinku. End of Harano Shinku. He's dead. Blood on the ground. Corpse rotting in the sun. Let me sing you a song while we're at it. In the cave I saw a corpse rot. And guess what? Nobody cared, nobody cared. Nobody came since nobody dared. And in the cave a corpse rotted away. And guess what? It was Shinku's, by the way. That's horrible. That's the truth. He winced as his right hand clenched gently against the palm of Fu's, resting by his side. That's not. You died. Congratulations. You're dead. Let us cry the death of Shinku. Dead last extraordinaire. That was theoretical. Yes, it was, but do you want to know the truth, Shinku? When that time will come, I will push someone else in the firing line. Because I am you, your true you, and I want to survive. We want to survive, Shinku. Why are you telling me this? You're a figment of my imagination. It doesn't work that way, Shinku. The brain is wonderful, but it has its limits. You're broken now. You'll remain broken forever and ever. We'll always be together, Shinku. You can't leave your other self behind now, forget it as if it's nothing more than a piece of loose clothing to scrap. It was quiet, as the voice whispered out of his mouth a low murmur, barely audible. I am here to survive, Shinku, he whispered. The door opened then, as Nariko came walking in with a bowl per hand. She carefully deposited the bowls on the side of the bed, and then snickered at the sight of a wide-eyed Shinku and a drooling Fu over the right side of Shinku's body. Ah, that's cute. Shinku glared at Nariko. Really cute, Nariko added. Shinku glared more. Mr. Chiryunin can easily untangle himself, right? She added then. I'm not. He whispered, before looking around. The coast clear, he mouthed. I'm not really a Chiryunin. It's Kakashi's. Kakashi and I told me, Nariko shrugged. No worries, she chuckled. He told me and duck butt. Really, you should have seen the Hayaga's face when Yojao-sensei told him you were a Chiryunin. It was priceless. Fu moaned lightly at the noise Nariko made, turning to the side and cracking open one of her eyes to gaze at the girl. Nariko snickered. Hello Fu-chan. Slept well in Shin-chan's arms. Fu blinked blearily, before suddenly turning crimson and buzzing off the bed and on the side of it. I'm sorry. I didn't want to fall asleep, Shin-kun. She bowed repeatedly. Ah, it's all. Nariko snickered some more, before Suzuki barged in. Did I miss it? Then he exhaled in relief. I didn't. Miss what? Shinku asked dumbfounded. Come on, guess, Nariko snickered as Fu turned an even darker shade of red. I don't know. Told you he was as thick as a marble column, Nariko chuckled, showing her open palm to Suzuki, who passed over 5 ryos. Fu pouted, before crossing her arms over her chest. Really, no reaction? Suzuki grumbled. Nothing at all? What are you talking about? Shinku asked, slowly standing up from his position on the bed. He winced as he could feel his head drum, the incoming headache slowly building itself up. Now, get back down, Nariko chided him before forcing him to stay down once more. I'm fine, really, he grumbled. You shouldn't underestimate it, Sasuke replied. People can die of killing intent, you know? It is a natural emission of yin chakra by enemy shinobi. It actually is a technique by itself, and Kirigaku or shinobi can not only make a target freeze with it, some can even bring the enemy to commit suicide by simply watching them hard enough. Yeah, Shin-chan, I was actually scared you were going to die out there. It was stupid to take up that challenge like that. You know what that calls for. Sasuke then plopped down on one side of the bed, as Nariko grinned while doing the same on the other side. Shinku frowned. What? Team hug. Gah. Sputtering in embarrassment, Shinku found himself hugged on both sides by both Nariko and Sasuke, before Fu joined the fray with a hug too. What is wrong with you lot? He asked then, his voice slightly cracked. If you tell this to anyone, I will kill you, Sasuke stated plainly before standing back up. Nariko chuckled as she did the same, while Fu detached herself with a pout. What, did she want to keep on hugging him some more? What brought this on? Shinku asked once more. When Duckbutt does something stupid, first comes the, how could you do something that stupid, talk and then the hug, Nariko nodded sagely. It's part of the deal, you know. Something bad comes first and then something good comes next, and hugs are good, right? Well, we skipped the, how could you do something that stupid, part because Kakashi Nii is the one to blame. Really, that man, Sasuke growled. Does he really have no shame? Shinku chuckled. Nariko blinked. Oh, right. She handed over one bowl to him and one to Fu. Dinner is served. Nariko's team only ramen specialty for sour moods, guaranteed to work 900% of times. 900%. Shinku remarked dryly, making a small smile. Why 900? 9 tails, 900, 9 times awesome, Nariko flashed him a bright smile. Just like Yuke-chan is Yuke times awesome. Why does that sound more like a bad thing? Sasuke grumbled. Fu giggled. I'm 7 times awesome then, she said. 7's a lucky number too. Shinku didn't properly remember when he fell asleep, probably after dinner and a few more minutes of talking, what with his stomach being full and his mind tired. He knew that when he woke up at 4 in the morning, there was a hand over his mouth. His eyes widened briefly, as Kakashi-sensei's face came into view, his free hand moving over his masked lips in a quiet sign. In the room, the rest of Hibachi's team was resting. He carefully moved past the sleeping form of his once classmate. He had gone to bed dressed after all and descended the stairs. The sun had yet to rise, and the cold air mixed with the salty breeze and the rotten fish smell filled his nostrils, waking him up completely. Kakashi-sensei. They passed by the tents pitched out, where probably the rest of the teams were sleeping, and then headed in the direction of the village. He remained quiet, even as they took to the rooftops. There wasn't a sound throughout the entire village, eerily so, as they trudged across the roofs of the dilapidated buildings. It was no different than tree walking, and as Shinku caught his breath, he watched the silver hair of his sensei shine lightly beneath the light of the moon. Then, they stopped close to the bridge. Beyond the bridge, Kakashi spoke slowly, there's Gato's mansion up in the hills. Shinku paled. The man couldn't be asking him this, could he? There is a strict issue of shinobi being paid in advance before completing their missions, hence why there is usually no need to kill the contractor of another shinobi team. Kakashi's lonely eye narrowed on him. I underestimated you. Shinku began to tremble, as the air grew thick with the scent of blood, his entire body began to sweat as his throat constricted. He needed air, he needed to breathe. So it will not happen again, Kakashi acquiesced. You learned how to walk on water. If you apply the same principle to solid ground, but in reverse, you will not make any noise as you walk forward. Sensei. Tsunami-san left the house earlier tonight, headed towards Gato's mansion. It is clear what her intentions are. She will plead the man to have mercy on the village, and Gato will kill her before showing her body tomorrow in the middle of the village. He'll probably leave the corpse to rot and hang, with the Mist Shinobi protecting it. Why? If you want to save her, you would have to infiltrate the mansion, avoid or fight your way through the Kirigakure Shinobi that are there, and then escape with her, Kakashi remarked. In order to avoid a war with Kiri, you would either have to silence all witnesses or do it in such a way as to not be discovered. Kakashi hummed thoughtfully. What do you do? It was a question? He wouldn't go and save her, it was that simple. I wouldn't go. You know, Kakashi said then, Naruko would. She would charge straight ahead, fighting through the Kirigakure Shinobi and Jounin without a care in the world, conscious that either Sensei or someone else would come to help her because she'd be doing the right thing, or maybe she'd use the Kyuubi, the silver-haired Jounin side. Sasuke too would go, out of chivalry and Uchiha sense of honor. He would go to save an innocent woman from such a thing and would probably act as quietly as possibly. He would fail, and then he would use his main Sharingan to get out of the trouble. His eye then turned to him. You, on the other hand, I expected the answer, I did. You have nothing to use as backup after all. It's normal, isn't it? A shinobi that fucks up a mission dies 9 times out of 10, Shinku. There's no magical rewind button or super powerful shield technique for the rest of the shinobi. You sneeze and you don't get to laugh with the enemy who just discovered you, you sneeze and you die. You blink and you're dead. You mutter something and if you're heard, you die. Naruko and Sasuke, they're both fearless. Kakashi exhaled. It's not a good thing at all, in the shinobi business, to be without fear. The cold breeze picked up a bit more, as Shinku quietly gazed ahead. Why are we here, sensei? If, instead of Tsunami currently being killed, there was Naruko, or Sasuke, would you intervene? His breathing caught in his throat, Shinku closed his eyes sharply and trembled. Would he? Hadn't he done so the first time around? No. No, the first time around, they had been there along the way. He wouldn't move, and yet, he had an inkling of doubt that the other two, they would. Even if it would start a war, the other two would come for him. I would die, he whispered. What help could I give? Kakashi hummed. You see, that's the problem. You wouldn't know unless you tried. There was another long minute of silence. I don't think I ever told you, but, let me be perfectly clear, Kakashi remarked. Those who abandon their mission are trash. His voice suddenly felt as heavy as a rock, weighting down on Shinku's shoulders and crushing the air out of his lungs. Those who abandon their teammates, however, they are worse than trash. Then, Kakashi's right hand gripped tightly on Shinku's shoulder. If your teammates are about to die, and you do not step in to save them, Harano Shinku, I will kill you myself. You are an expendable resource of Konoha, do not give yourself a higher value than the lives of your teammates, because you don't even have a value. His single eye narrowed sharply on Shinku's pale face. You are probably the most worthless shinobi of the academy. I have seen dead lasts rise through hard work and training done to the point that blood oozed out of their mouths. I know of a boy without chakra that still became a shinobi, passing the academy on taijutsu alone. You are worthless, a worthless sack of flesh and an outright worthless shinobi. You wear the jacket that belongs to a dead person as if you've earned it, but you did not. Someone else killed the man, someone else is worthy of wearing the jacket. Shinku's breathing grew ragged. Maybe that Jounin had a family. When you took his flak jacket away you took out the only chance of his widow to cry on something. Did you think about that? No, of course not. What of the son, who might have wanted to wear his father's flak jacket? Kakashi's own came from his father's one, after all. What of the things he had in his pockets? Did he have a photo of his family in there? Did you check? Did you care? No, you didn't. Kakashi tore down on Shinku like a flood, as tears menaced to erupt from the boy's eyes. This is why, Kakashi snapped the jacket open, you don't get to wear that flak jacket anymore. Shinku was trembling by the time Kakashi flung the flak jacket behind him, letting it land on the rooftop's surface with a thud. Kakashi's single eye then closed for a moment, as the Jounin's breath grew even once more. From this moment onwards, he carefully unrolled a scroll from his vest, letting it puff to reveal a flak jacket much like his own, if not newer. From this moment, you will wear this one from Konoha. He handed it over and it was all that Shinku could do to actually grasp it without letting it fall on the ground, his eyes wide as he gazed at Kakashi. He couldn't understand just what was going on. Let me just tell you this, as a final parting knowledge, Kakashi added thoughtfully. Naruko and Sasuke heard Tsunami move, considering there are 2 Kage Bunshin in the tent in their place. Shinku's entire frame stilled. His breathing ceased completely. They followed her, heading towards Gato's mansion. No. Shinku croaked, no, no. Kakashi's hand calmly patted Shinku's shoulder. Of course, I stopped them, Shinku exhaled in relief. But you, well, if you want to try your hand at infiltrating a highly secured building knowing your previous experience. Kakashi's lone eye twinkled, I could show you the ropes of assassination. If that's how you pitch in students to learn from you, Shinku snarled, it's not a wonder they placed an observer. Kakashi's lone eye sharply narrowed. Shinku stared back at him with defiance in his eyes, rather than the meek-looking and half-scared senseless boy of before. He donned his Chunin armor, carefully closing the flak jacket with quick and precise movements before giving him a curt nod. I'm going back to bed, he hissed. Next time you want to try and have me killed, think again, sensei. Spitting out that word like an insult, Shinku left the rooftops headed towards the house. Kakashi hummed, that's interesting. Beneath the sky that slowly began to lit up, Shinku walked furiously across the streets. Really, what did the man believe? Assassination? Him? Why would he even care about that? He was in for a desk job. A desk job. He'd murder paperwork. He wouldn't murder anything or anyone else. Worse, why had the man taken an interest in him? What was he? A sacrifice? Expendable resource. Sure, when compared to Naruko, Sasuke or Fu, he was expendable. He was expendable. Would anyone even bat an eyelid if he were sacrificed? Would anyone? He smiled briefly then, as his anger slowly melted away. His team probably would mount up a storm. Yes, they probably would. Excuse me, a little voice called to him, as he turned to watch a young woman in a form-fitting kimono stumble forward. Shinobi-san. Yes. He said, warily eyeing her. The kimono seemed new when compared to everything else around the village, but he supposed that, well, whorehouses always had rooms filled with misery in the air. Are you heading out of town? Yes, he nodded back. Ah. Could we go together, please Shinobi-san? I'm a bit scared of going around the streets now so early in the morning. Shinku shrugged. Thanks, with that, the woman actually linked arms with him. He frowned at the gesture, but the girl just smiled at him kindly. They began to walk towards the exit of the village like that Waitajuna had built his house away from it was something Shinku didn't even want to ask about, but it was quite the problem when Kakashi, of all people, brought him all the way there for nothing more than a chat. What is your name, Shinobi-san? The woman asked as they walked, trying to strike up some conversation. Shinku, he replied awkwardly. Crimson. The woman smiled, mine is Haku, she giggled. We're colors. White, Shinku acquiesced. We just need the rest of the rainbow I suppose. Shinku-san, Haku said with a light smile on her lips, were you checking on the bridge? It's coming along nicely, isn't it? She added excitedly, soon it's going to be finished and then wave will flourish once more. Why yeah, Shinku replied awkwardly. Little less than a week, then we'll be gone. The Kiri shinobi are a bit scary, don't you think? Haku asked him, her lips pursed showing off a light shade of lipstick. What with their swords and masks? She tightened her hold on his arm for a moment. When they came into the shop I work in, the brothel probably they were so scary. Not like you Konoha shinobi at all. She smiled. There's a boy, Hibachi-kun, he always come by and talk to me when he has some free time. Oh. He blinked. And what does he talk about? Haku giggled. Now, a girl doesn't tell certain things. I see, he acquiesced. Why are you going out of the village so early in the morning? Gathering herbs, she replied. I'm working at the chemist shop, so. Shinku felt ashamed of himself. Really, Why did he have to think she was a whore? He would have probably begged forgiveness, had he made his suspicions known beforehand, but he didn't, so everything was fine. You're not afraid of wild animals. Wave is free of such things, Haku replied. And I can defend myself, she added with a look that was more defenseless than sure of what she was doing. I see, he replied. Well, if you want a hand, he added then, there's nothing else I have to do during the day. Era, Haku smiled with her free hand to her mouth, are you hitting on me, Shinku-san? Shinku spluttered. And no. Oh, Haku made a crestfallen face. I would have let you. That's teasing. Shinku grumbled, you don't tease people like that, Haku-san. A girl needs to find her fun in life from somewhere, she flashed him a smile with her perfect white teeth. There are other means to have fun, Shinku muttered back, like baking. Baking is nice. Baking? Haku asked, you bake, Shinku-san? Why is everyone so surprised? He muttered. I'm the son of bakers, I'm supposed to know how to bake. Oh, the woman said, yet you chose the shinobi profession. Yes, he acquiesced. In retrospect, maybe it was stupid of me. I'm not even a good shinobi to begin with, he chuckled, before his eyes widened briefly. Wait, Haku's face turned into a light frown as she seemed to be mulling over something, you're Shinku Harano, perhaps. Hibachi spoke of me? Well. Haku looked sideways, he did. Oh? And what did he? Shinku-san, Haku said with a small and sad smile. Sometimes people say things they don't really mean. Ah, I understand, Shinku exhaled. Nothing good, I'm sure he does not really mean it. Was it really that bad? Shinku chuckled as Tajuna's house passed by in the corner of his eyes. The sun was barely starting to show, coloring everything a light shade of orange. Indeed, Haku murmured softly. But you do not strike me as a weak man, Shinku-san, she carefully lowered her head to the side, letting it rest on his shoulder. I'll tell Hibachi-kun next time he comes by, he shouldn't talk ill of his friends behind their backs. Shinku could only smile awkwardly. On the other hand, Haku was starting to get pissed off. The Chiryunen's jacket was empty of any important document, and the way he was following her, either he was truly the dead last the other Konoha genin claimed him to be, or there was something amiss. He didn't know why Zabuza-sama insisted on gathering information on the Chiryunen of all people, but maybe it was just a way to test him. He was one of the youngest hunter nins in the history of Kirigakure. There was nothing that could escape his eyes, and if he had to henge into a woman to obtain something and pad his chest with rubber, then he would do it for the sake of the mission. So why was he wondering what was the truth in the Chiryunen's words? Either he was a prodigy or he wasn't, and while everything pointed to the latter, he could not refute the way the others treated him. Talking with a jounin over the bridge at night, receiving private briefings and being a part of the command chain, getting down to business rather than run around like a headless chicken behind a crush, those were all things that people in command did. He'd find out everything he could, and then he'd go back to Zabuza-sama, either with the info he needed, or with a corpse. Any of the two was good enough to start a war, after all. Chapter 32, Something is taught every single time. A lot of people get hurt during the construction of the bridge, Haku whispered, her hands delicately grasping at a few strangely colored herbs. And with the high prices of Gatos Corporation, the supplying has stopped for the small businesses. She shook her head. What little comes through is usually priced so high nobody can acquire it anyway. Shinku watched her move around, carefully picking this or that plant that to him looked all the same. The sun was now high enough for it to be 7, or maybe even 8 in the morning. It peeked through the branches of the tree. Shinku yawned with a hand in front of his mouth, before noticing the red bug on the back of his hand and wincing. Carefully, he took out a kunao and began to spin it with his right hand, eyeing the nearby tree trunk. It really didn't feel any different, and yet he now had a flesh-eating bug in his right hand. How creepy was that to begin with? Haku's eyes narrowed slightly. Is something the matter, Shinku-san? No, nothing much, he shrugged. Just thinking. Had Fu done the same with Nariko and Sasuke? Or maybe he was special because he was her first friend. The girl was so carefree. However, how could she possibly not have made at least another? Are you aiming for the tree, Shinku-san? Haku asked, his left hand quietly moving to a senbon needle coated in poison in his right sleeve. Yes, Shinku acquiesced, before turning to gaze at Haku. The Kiri shinobi smiled, holding up his henge and finishing moving his left hand as if to dust her kimono off. Do you need a hand? Shinku pocketed the kunao a moment later. Ah, no, there will be no need, Haku remarked. He was starting to get annoyed. He needed to know more about their team, their composition, their power. I had a question, Haku tensed again. Was he actually fishing for information? Did he know that she was a he? No, it wasn't possible. Since you're a girl, well, I'm sure you can help me out with it. Haku made a strained smile. Yes. What reaction are you supposed to make when someone hugs you out of the blue? Shinku asked carefully. I don't get the big deal over it. I mean, what if you fell asleep next to a man and woke up afterwards? Why would the man need to react, and how? Was that a trick question? You mean, Shinku-san, if I went to sleep next to a man by mistake? Yes, he acquiesced. Well, I'd need to trust the man, Haku said, and then, I suppose I'd be flustered if I fell asleep by mistake. Sleeping makes all people defenseless. For a ninja, it would undoubtedly be twice that problematic. Even Kirigaku or Jounin. Shinku's voice came out as a low hiss, his eyes narrow and his gaze hard. Haku simply froze. The implications were that he knew of his mission, and he was acting like this on purpose. How terrifying, was this why Zabuza-sama wanted him checked? I don't know, they're pretty scary, maybe they know how to sleep lightly. Shinku returned thoughtful. There's a way to walk quietly after all, he mumbled. Still, why would a girl sleep by mistake next to a guy? Maybe, she likes him. He hazarded. Shinku chuckled. Really? Then he shook his head. No, I don't think that's possible. Why not? Haku remarked. There's too much of a difference, he muttered. I'm not really a likable person to begin with, he added. Don't girls prefer tough and mean-looking shinobi or upstart clan children? When you're the son of bakers, really, you don't get girls flocking at you. I find you very likable, Shinku-san, Haku remarked. Being a Chiryunin, I'm sure you are also strong. He didn't reply to that, instead pushing his back against the nearby tree's trunk and then thoughtfully gazing up in the air. That's impossible, Haku's ears heard him mutter. What are you getting your head in the gutter for? Ignoring the words apparently but actually listening in, Haku continued to collect herbs, remaining within earshot. Don't think you'll find a girlfriend in that way. Come on, be realistic. But you heard her, he muttered. No, it is unneeded and distracting. For you it's all about surviving this and that, really. Then why don't you gather up the courage and go say something, You scared wimp. Haku hummed. Maybe he'd stop with the talking with himself act soon enough. A loud buzzing soon resounded in the air, as Haku's ears perked up. It grew increasingly closer, zeroing in on their location as the branches broke apart from the incoming bullet of green chakra that landed in the clearing a moment later. Sniffing the air, Fu took a moment before turning her head sharply to where Shinku was standing and then colliding with his perplexed form. Shin-kun! She exclaimed, hugging him. Uzuki-sensei is really mad at you. She added then sweetly, you're not supposed to leave the bed yet. I was called out by Kakashi-sensei, Shinku muttered back. It wasn't like I could refuse, he added softly. Oh my, Shinku-san, Haku said standing up. You were injured? I let you follow me, while you should have been resting. How inconsiderate of me. It's all right, Shinku added hastily, it was nothing worth mentioning. Fu gripped on his neck and spun, getting slightly behind him before pouting and looking at Haku. Who's she? Haku-san, Shinku replied awkwardly. She works at the chemist shop in Wave. Fu narrowed her golden eyes on Haku. Haku tensed slightly, as he gripped onto his basket and cocked his head to the side. Well, he began with his falsetto voice, I'll be going then, thank you for your help in guarding me, Shinku-san. He moved closer then, taking out a little wild chrysanthemum and placing it in the pocket of his jacket. Here, the chrysanthemum is a sign of power and respect, hope it helps you. Then, smiling and waving, she headed back across the meadow. Shinku's head suddenly felt pulled to the side, and he ended up staring deeply into the honey eyes of Fu. The girl bit her lips lightly, before turning a bright red shade and letting go. She hesitantly took a step backwards, holding her hands behind her back, and then looked sideways. She mumbled. There's. Yes. Breakfast, Fu quickly blurted out, before grabbing at his hand. We're going to be late if we don't move. With that said, she gripped his midriff and shot off in the air. Hey! Shinku's exclamation died in the wind, as he ended up carried all the way back to Tajuna's house. Tsunami wasn't there. It was as he realized that, as he watched the furrowed brow of Tajuna turn serious as he gazed around in worry, that he finally understood what had happened truly the night before. We saw her head out, Nariko exclaimed, flailing her arms wildly. She said she was going for a stroll. His heart drummed hard in his chest. The dobe wanted to follow her, but Sensei stopped us from leaving. She said she was just going to watch the seaside by the beach. This was Suzuki's voice. Ma, she'll be fine, Kakashi's voice came next. She's an adult, she makes her choices, he added thoughtfully, before turning to gaze at Shinku. Look who's back from his morning walk, the man smiled brightly. You saw Tsunami-san perhaps, Shinku-kun. And no, he stuttered out, shaking his head. I was in the meadow over there, he pointed in the general direction from where Fu had flown them back. What happened? My daughter disappeared, that's what. Tajuna exclaimed, you're tasked with guarding me and my family and yet she disappeared. Team 4 is tasked with guarding you, Tajuna-san, Kakashi remarked, not your family, and only from bandits. We are tasked with delivering the extra scroll and enhancing the protection of the bridge against bandit attacks. If your daughter chose to leave, it's none of our business. Tajuna ground his teeth and clenched his fist. I knew it, the small kid Inari said then, in the end, you can do nothing against Geto, he muttered. He probably killed her already. Inari screamed, tears coming out of his eyes as he dashed back inside the house. Inari! Tajuna exclaimed, turning to look at his grandson. Gritting his teeth, the bridge builder exhaled. I'm sure she'll be back home by tonight, he muttered. I have to go to the bridge now. He turned to look at the assembled shinobi. Please, couldn't some of you just look for her? Kakashi hummed. Why not? He gazed at Niji and Tenten. You too and. He pointed at Fu, Fu-chan will look for Tsunami. Kakashi then gazed at Hibachi, Kota, and Ami, you three will guard the bridge together with your sensei and. Kakashi pointed at his own team. We will do some training. Heitake-san, Yojeo firmly quipped. I believe Harano-kun has yet to fully recover. He's healthy enough to go for a morning walk, he's healthy enough to train, Kakashi smiled. Yojeo merely narrowed her eyes, before crossing her arms over her chest and nodding. Very well, I will oversee your method of training. No, breakfast. Fu mumbled then, gazing quizzically around. Tsunami-san isn't here, Tenten remarked gently, watching the downcast expression of the tanned girl with a soft gaze. We can find something to eat at the village. All right, Fu nodded, before smiling brightly towards Shinku and the rest of the team. See you later guys, Shinku-kun. And then the three were off. You spoke of a meadow, right? Kakashi queried, make way. Shinku nodded, and soon they headed off straight back where he had helped Haku gather the herbs. Today's lesson was especially prepared for my cute little genin, Kakashi began in a bored tone. There was a moment of silence, as everyone waited for the silver-haired jounin to speak. It is a lesson of trust, wits, and skills, which you will all undoubtedly fail. Then Kakashi closed his ika-ika, and grinned. Try to kill each other. Nariko blinked. Suzuki stared. Shinku raised an eyebrow. What? Nariko croaked out. Kakashi nii? What are you? Heitake-san, this is perfectly within regulations, Kakashi smiled back at Yojeo. Have you been training them? Yojeo hissed. That's for Umbu's trainee workout, not for Genin students. Kakashi shrugged. They're grown up, they can take it. He giggled then. The deal is simple. Try to kill each other. The winner gets. He looked at Naruko, she'll get the raise non. Naruko's eyes widened. You'll get training in utilizing the Mangekyou, and attack as Umbu uniform, I still have it, you know. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, and then Kakashi looked at Shinka with his single eye gazing hard at him. And for you, you get to keep the Chunin flak jacket as an actual promotion on the battlefield. Kakashi hummed. Of course, if I were to stop you from killing each other it would be problematic, because you wouldn't go all out, so I will not intervene, and neither will Uzuki-san. Hey Take-san, this is. You want me to test your training, Uzuki-san? Kakashi's voice snapped at the woman hard, making Yojao wince. Very well, Kakashi nodded then. Now, this might seem like the primary objective is to kill each other, the truth is that you should aim to survive until the end. Then he blinked. Course, unless there's blood spraying around I won't be sure you actually killed each other, so do try and make the wounds deep, alright? Kakashi I'm not going to do this, Naruko huffed, crossing her arms over her chest. We're a team, we stick together. Yes, Kakashi-sensei, Sasuke spat out, this is bullshit. There is no way any of us would accept. Shinka nodded awkwardly at the end. Well then, if that's how you want to play it. Kakashi twirled a kunai out of his pouch. I'll just have to fight you three together then. The next moment, Shinka found himself pushed down by Sasuke, as a blade sliced the air straight where his head would have been a moment before. A few strands of black hair fell right on the tip of Shinka's nose, as he watched the gleefully humming Kakashi twirl another kunai in his other hand. I'll be coming at you with the intent to kill. Try to survive. Kakashi. A kick slammed into Naruko's guts, sending her to fly backwards and fall against the ground. The girl rolled before jumping back on her feet, creating 4 cage bunshin. That hurt. That would have ruptured the stomach of Shinka-kun, Kakashi remarked with a bright smile. Well, next kick is on him then. With speed, a punch sailed straight for Sasuke's jaw rather than for Shinka's stomach, sending the Uchiha to crash on the ground hard. The 4 bunshin charged ahead then, Naruko herself in the midst of the fray. Shinka gripped his own kunai. What was he? Enemy Jounin. Run. But that's... Shinka's eyes widened for a fraction, before he gripped on Sasuke's side and pulled him back up. We need to leave, he hissed, his voice coarse. Now. Kakashi hummed from his spot, dispatching the bunshin and then slamming Naruko's real body against the back of the 2 other genin. The blunt impact of the blow collided against Shinka's back, sending him to tumble down on the ground and taste the earth with his mouth, his eyes closed. Suddenly, he felt grabbed by the ankles and pulled away, back into the fray. A kick slammed into his sides. He didn't even get to stand back up as he rolled and ended up face up as a kunai came down for his chest. He pushed his elbow against the ground, turning to the side and then gripping on Kakashi's ankle with his left hand. His right pushed forth for a cheap shot in the man's low regions, as the kunai ended the trajectory straight against Shinka's back. The flak jacket protected him, as Kakashi chose to replace his body with a log rather than suffer a punch in the nuts one Shinka would have gladly given him. Taking little jumps to the sides, Kakashi pushed through once more. This time Sasuke intercepted him with a punch coming from below, soon followed by Naruko from the upper side opposite the Uchiha. The blood sprayed thinly as ninja wire emerged from Kakashi's wrists, tightening around both extended limbs. Shinka's hand flung the kunai in his palm then, sending it straight for the Jounin's chest. Smiling, Kakashi gripped on Naruko and pulled her forward as a shield. The kunai pierced straight through the girl's jumpsuit, spraying rivulets of blood out of it as she gasped. My, hitting your teammates on the back, that's not nice at all, Shinka-kun, Kakashi mock said, before slamming the girl back like a ragdoll straight to impact against Sasuke's form. The 2 knocked down once more, Shinka ground his teeth. The air suddenly thickened as Kakashi's hand went to his Sharingan. The next moment, Shinka stared at 2 eyes, one of which held a spinning tomo, and then he was there, with Kakashi chuckling and pulling his hands in a cage bunshin move. I'm going to enjoy torturing the dead last, he acquiesced, before delivering a spinning kick with one of his clones against him. It felt slow, however, slow enough he actually could dodge it. This had to be a genjutsu, but it was so obvious it actually perplexed him. Biting down on his lips, he watched the cage bunshin wane as the real Kakashi remained behind. Both Sasuke and Naruto had meanwhile stood up once more, growling and eyeing the silver-haired Jounin with distaste. "Shin-chan, you still alive?" "Yeah," he acquiesced. "We need a plan, Dobe," Sasuke muttered. "Got anything?" Kakashi nii with the Sharingan. "Can't you bring out yours too, Sasuke?" "You're joking," Sasuke remarked. "I'm not pulling it out for this." "Why don't you use the Kyuubi then?" "The Kyuubi for training, are you the one mad?" Ma children," Kakashi sighed. "This is why I'm going for the kill, you see," he remarked. "If you won't train with what you've been gifted, then I just have to force you to use it," he added. "You both have an enormous potential, but every time, it takes too much to convince you to use it. A single genjutsu weaved with the Sharingan could end a threat far faster than trying to deal with it, without it." Kakashi cocked his head to the side. "You still refuse to take things seriously, but you know that in the end this will just bite you back, right? How do you expect to train the Kyuubi if you refuse to try and use its powers, Naruto?" Then he turned to Sasuke. "And you, what of the main Jakkyuha? You could have easily avoided most blows with the Susanoo, right?" Sasuke spat to the side, eyeing Kakashi warily. "You have gifts and yet you refuse to use them," the Jounin sighed. "It's not good at all." Exhaling, the man shrugged. "Guess there's no choice then. I'll really have to nearly kill one of you." Then he turned towards Shinku. "I'm going to step up the training right now, Shinku-kun. I hope you remember your words in the Forest of Death, because now we're going to see how much you really meant them." Then he was gone. Literally, he flickered away without a sound. Yojao watched the scene uncomfortably for a moment more, and then her hair began to sizzle and stand up straight. He wouldn't dare, he wouldn't. The noise of 1,000 birds soon rose in the air. Shinku knew what it was about, he knew because he remembered it. The man couldn't be. "3 little pigs are out in the open," Kakashi remarked. "3 little pigs I'm going to slaughter." The blood rushed through his body and towards his ear as his heart drummed faster than ever, his breathing ragged and his eyes wide in fear. He trembled, the air growing heavier and heavier with each passing instant. "There are many spots I can aim for," Kakashi hummed from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. "The neck, the heart, the chest, the spine, the kidneys, how many I wonder can I hit in a single blow?" Kakashi nii. Naruto's trembling stopped after a few seconds, replaced with her frozen form in fear. Sasuke too ground his teeth. "Are you going to intervene or what?" He snapped towards Yojao, who merely looked with her impassive gaze back at the Uchiha, before replying. "If things get out of hand, but Hatake-san has always been faster than anyone else in Umbu. I might not make it in time so." "Run," Shinku croaked out. "Run. Run. Run." In that moment, the noise grew even heavier as Kakashi charged from the side with his lightning cutter aimed straight for Sasuke's chest. The boy's eyes turned to the main Jakkyuha, as the Susanoo's form appeared slamming away both Naruto and Shinku due to its massive size. Shinku brought both hands to his face as the strength of the blow made him roll on the ground and crash against an exposed root, taking the breath out of his mouth. Kakashi's Raikiri sailed then past Sasuke, slightly diverting its trajectory and aiming at Naruto in midair. The girl puffed away in a cloud of smoke seconds before the technique could wound her and thus the Jounin aimed at him, barely back on his knees. He had less than a second to think about a solution, about anything that would not leave him skewered on the ground. When everything went down, what could he count on? A schizophrenic second personality could not help him divert a Raikiri. He needed something, anything that could keep him alive when everything went to hell like in that instant. Something. He charged ahead. With his speed, it simply looked as if he had stood up ready to take the blow of the Raikiri with his body. The pain he felt was beyond mention as the electricity crushed through his shoulder and burnt flesh sizzled. Shinku screamed as his body pulled itself forward with the kunai still firmly in his right hand, aiming for Kakashi's neck. In that single instant, everything seemed to slow down as Shinku's breathing eased. There was a strange sound, as if something tore right next to him. He sliced at Kakashi's neck uncaring of the pain. He wasn't even feeling it, and then, abruptly, it stopped. His left arm was on the ground. The man had torn apart his left arm with training. His left arm was on the ground, twitching. His left arm. His left. Genjutsu. It had to be a genjutsu. It had to be a frigging genjutsu. His left arm was tied to his body, it wasn't there on the ground. Kai. 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 It was a genjutsu, it had to be a genjutsu. That single instant of outright fear turned to rage when he realized that he hadn't even hit the real Kakashi, but a Kage Bunshin. He wasn't bleeding out, but he felt so tired and... Shinku. Sasuke's scream merely reached his ears as a dulled-out whisper, his Susanoo disappearing as Shinku's sight grew progressively dark. This was a genjutsu. Why couldn't he break free? Kai. 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 Damn you. Kai. Shin-chan. Naruko was near him in an instant, but by then it was too late. Kakashi reappeared with his right leg extended, intent on slamming it down on Naruko's side of the face. Shinku pushed her backward, the kick shattering his right hand and dropping him on the ground once more. He gasped for air as he breathed in deeply, the pain running through his body like hot needles. Why the hell did you do that? Why? Teammates as shields, isn't no. Damn. Roll back. His eyes widened as Kakashi's feet came down to crush his face, but it stilled as an arrow of purple chakra forced him to dodge to the side. Sasuke grunted, panting hard as his eyes kept on the Mangekyou, the Susanoo having fired the bolt dispersing again into the air. Naruko growled, about to charge ahead once more. Run. Shinku spat out, just run goddammit. Naruko's perplexed face lasted until Kakashi jumped back into the fray, slamming a knee into the girl's chest and throwing her backwards, right next to Sasuke's panting form. Then, leisurely, the Jounin began to walk towards Shinku. Sacrificing your shoulder to avoid damage to your internal organs takes guts, Kakashi acquiesced. This is a genjutsu. This is a genjutsu. This is a genjutsu. Break out of this, Shinku. Break out. 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 He was into the air then, Kakashi holding him by the throat. Kakashi nii. Let him go. Naruko exclaimed, he needs a hospital. Where had he heard that sentence again? Naruko, Sasuke, Kakashi remarked dryly. Fight each other or Shinku dies. Why was he doing this? Why was he? Naruko clenched her fists, before turning to stare at Sasuke, who looked bitterly towards Kakashi. The two genin slammed both of her fists at the same time against one another, while Kakashi watched holding a kunai to the side of Shinku's neck. Now don't move, Kakashi remarked, wouldn't want the kunai to actually kill you. As if the blood loss or the shock wouldn't, wait. Wait a moment. The bastard. A sharp thrust of his neck forward made him gurgle, as he closed his eyes shut with all the strength he could muster. The next instant, his vision came back. He growled, gazing at Kakashi, who simply watched him with a leisurely smile on his lips hidden by the mask as always. Ma, Kakashi muttered, gazing at him. Already out. Already. He hissed, his left hand clenching tightly. Already. He snarled, eyeing him murderously. What the hell do you think you're doing? Do you call this teaching, seeing my life flash in front of me time and time again? What is it? Is there some sort of twisted sadistic desire for torture that gets you off, you bastard? Kakashi smiled. As I said before, you're already out. Shinku's spit caught in his throat. He couldn't be referring to when. That's for me to know, Kakashi smiled brightly. It is a normal reaction, however, a coping mechanism to stress. I speak to a tomb regularly, thinking of it as a real person who answers back, so I can understand. As long as you realize that you aren't actually two different persons, it can be used as a boon in battle all the same. Where are? Knocked them out, really, when I'm coming at you with the intent to kill, Sasuke should immediately reveal his Sharingan. Afterwards, he should keep both you and Naruko in his line of sight. The Sharingan can remove illusions from others as long as there is visibility, you know? Nifty trick right there to solve all of your genjutsu problems. Kakashi sighed. But no, nobody takes training seriously these days, really. Maybe if you weren't such a slacking bastard and actually taught us, Shinku snarled. Really? And what should I teach two prodigies in a dead last, Do you want to learn a katon? You'd burn yourself at the second try. I could teach it to Naruko, and she'd turn to cinder the forest because the girl, no matter how much I consider her my sister, is too stupid to realize the actual length of her potential. Give her a cinder and she'll burn down a forest. Shinku cocked his head to the side. What am I then, your anti-stress? You think it's easy to see death coming up front to you? And what about sacrificing me and me having no value, Really? What are you expecting, pity? Sasuke could learn any technique if only he activated his Sharingan, Kakashi remarked. With true will, they'd both be Jounin by the age of 15, I can sense that. By training hard I became a shinobi at 5 and a Chunin at 6. By the time I was 13, I was already a Jounin. I didn't have the Sharingan then, my father wasn't anything special. He was the White Fang, but did he have any special bloodline, or skill? No, he didn't. Kakashi's eyes narrowed on him. He was just a very good shinobi. You finished having your trip in memory lane, where at the end you tell me I suck and I'd be better off dead or something like that. Kakashi chuckled. Contrary to what you think, I don't really hate you, Shinku-kun. If anything, I'm glad I have such a funny little genin in my team. Excuse me if I find nothing of funny in this, Shinku snarled. So this is how you moved through the killing intent of a Jounin, Kakashi remarked calmly, changing argument as he took a step forward. You didn't actually move, but you let someone else move for you. It was a matter of survival, Shinku hissed, but now. He coughed and then exhaled, trembling slightly. Kakashi smiled, closing both eyes. Well, Shinku-kun, you heard us talk. Why yes sensei, he nodded quickly. Please don't tell anyone. Oh? And why not? Kakashi cocked his head to the side, carefully putting his forehead protector back to cover his Sharingan. Because it's not normal. We aren't the definition of normality around here, you know, Kakashi deadpanned with a light snicker, before slowly bringing his right hand down to pat on Shinku's head. You're doing very well, you know this. Stuttering, Shinku remained quiet as the hand of his sensei kept on patting him as if he were a dog. Good, Kakashi smiled. Have a treat. Shinku gazed at him with a narrow gaze, but Kakashi just kept up smiling. I'm not a dog. Oh, so you can speak too, very well, Kakashi chuckled, stopping the petting. Now, while Uzuki-san is busy keeping an eye on your two teammates, we need to finish our late-night chat. Shinku frowned, gazing at him. You understand I'm pressing on you because you're the weakest link, right? Why yes, Shinku nodded grimly, but assassination is. I have to ask, Kakashi wondered, why did you keep on telling Naruko and Sasuke to run? Well, the ones of the genjutsu at least. You're a Jounin, he softly muttered. There's a difference between risking one's life for a mission, and going suicidal. You're the only one who believed I'd actually go for a kill though, even Sasuke got caught by not taking it seriously. Shinku gazed sideways. You are a psychotic madman, it was hard not to believe you. Kakashi hummed his agreement. You threw yourself at the Kunao to end the genjutsu, right? What gave it away? Yeah, he acquiesced. The pain didn't last. The pain, it's a dull and continuous throbbing. It never ceases. Every movement you make, every instant, every second, you feel the limb hurt you in some way. It can only go down, but every tiny movement makes it a hell on earth. You're referring to the Forest of Death experience. Yes, he acquiesced. That was because of the infection and the bad healing. Generally it isn't meant to hurt after the nerves go dead from the electric shock. Shinku blinked. Really? Yes. An expert shinobi would have been fooled into believing the attack actually connected because he no longer felt pain, rather than because he felt it. Oh, Shinku looked to the side. What? He mumbled then, what about tsunami? Kakashi exhaled. Well, I did lie on knowing where she went. Maybe she went to Geto, maybe she didn't. If she didn't come back she's most certainly dead however, he shrugged. That is none of our business. Shinku nodded quietly. You should tell the rest of your team, Kakashi remarked then, about your little problem. Right, Shinku muttered, so we'll all have our good little moment of team hugging again, he mumbled shaking his head. I'll pass on that. Kakashi shrugged. Don't make it a big deal, every shinobi worth his salt has a quirk. I know someone who doesn't go anywhere without screaming Yosh at least a few dozen times. Right, Shinku blinked, what of Gai-san? What of him? When is he coming? Good question. We need him to complete the bridge, Shinku deadpanned. Kakashi just hummed thoughtfully. Maybe he'll be here tomorrow. Hey take-san, Yojao flickered into the meadow. I would run if I were you. Kakashi nii. Naruko screamed as she charged, clearly angry for some reason, soon followed by Sasuke. Kakashi disappeared faster than Shinku could blink. Yojao gazed at Shinku then, and handed over a nice round cookie. Here, as his mouth mechanically began to chew over the pastry, his mind grumbled. He wasn't a dog. Still, the chocolate was good, and it didn't hurt anyone. Chapter 33, Unquestionable Realizations. Tsunami did not return for lunch and as such, Naruko gripped both Shinku and Sasuke's sleeves firmly as she pulled them across the countryside all the way to the beach. The sound of the waves crashing against the sand easily drowned that of the girl's words, as she extracted a small scroll while mumbling something about reserves and dark times. I have enough for 4 days, she muttered, considering a lunch of ramen and a dinner of dry meat. We could always eat fish, Bimbo, Sasuke remarked. We're near the water after all. The thick smell of oil reached Shinku's nostrils as he grimaced. This time, it mixed with the smell of rotten fish that was practically a natural presence in the area. Near the shore as it was, it simply increased in its stench. Shin-chan, you've got nothing in those pockets. Shinku blinked, before starting to check them out. There was the usual shinobi assortment of kunao, shuriken, ninja wire and normal every mission tools. They were of a better quality than those he normally had, but apart from that, nothing edible, he mumbled. He did have his melted chocolate bar in his jacket's pocket however, which was beneath his flak jacket. Maybe he could throw that away, just to be on the safe side. So it's ramen, Naruko remarked, ramen and dry meat. I'll try and get a fish, Bimbo, Sasuke grumbled. With what fishing rod? You're going to tie a string to your little Uchiha and then dangle it around. Naruko retorted with a curt tone, holding a small smile on her lips. You want to kill the fishes by flashing at them, team. Dub, Sasuke growled, want to try and use your power of stupid. Shinku's hands trembled slightly, before he exhaled. He muttered. I lied before, he croaked out. Naruko and Sasuke both blinked, before gazing at him. So, you have food? Naruko asked, raising an eyebrow. Why were you keeping it then? If it's chocolate though, we can save that for later you know. No, not about that, he muttered. I know where Tsunami went, he breathed in deeply. I was with Kakashi-sensei, he knew and he told me. So why didn't he tell Tajuna-san? Naruko asked once more. Sasuke's eyes narrowed slightly, before the Uchiha raised an eyebrow as if waiting for Shinku to continue his tale. Because Tsunami might have gone to Geto, Shinku stuttered out. And if she did, she might already be dead. OHI now, Naruko exclaimed, that's a bit of a... That. Sasuke closed his eyes, that bastard. He let her go. What the hell was he hoping to pull? I don't know, Shinku mumbled. He held his tongue on the rest of the speech. Why did he tell you? Naruko asked then, warily gazing at him. Why you? There was a light bitter tone in her voice. I mean, why didn't he tell us too that night? He just sent us to sleep and then got you and told you, why? You would have gone to save her, right? Shinku said back, with his gaze downcast. Risking a war, risking your lives, you would have tried to save her from Geto, right? Of course we would. Naruko yelled, that's obvious. They couldn't keep her or kill her, and if we... Dub, shut up, Sasuke snapped, before gazing at him hard. So, Kakashi called you out, told you what was going on, and then you kept quiet rather than tell us or Tajuna. You even went for a morning walk rather than try and find out more. You simply let it be, didn't you? What did you expect me to do? Charge in Kunao in hand. Shinka retorted. We have an Umbu observer in the team. You could have talked to her. Naruko yelled at him. So I should have risked her life, the start of war, the deaths of hundreds or even thousands, because of a woman who couldn't accept reality. Shinka snarled back, standing up, and clenching his fists. I even know what's going to happen when the bridge will be completed. They told me and I have to keep it a secret from everyone else. It's torturing me, but I can't tell anyone. His eyes closed shut. And here I am, blabbering it all out like an imbecile. He slapped a hand to his mouth, but it was too late. Naruko frowned, before growling and taking a step forward. What? What's going to happen? Shin-chan, you have to tell us. We're a team, aren't we? If he's been ordered not to tell, he shouldn't, Sasuke stated plainly. If it's a test of Kakashi's, he'll fail it. If it isn't, then he'd simply deliver us something we aren't meant to know, and that our sensei, Sasuke snorted with disdain, doesn't think we should know. Shin-chan, come on, Naruko prodded him, we're your teammates. Shinka remained quiet. He had said too much. Don't be a coward and tell me. Naruko yelled then, gripping his jacket. What did Kakashi and I say? What's going to happen now? Come on. You have to tell us. I would if Kakashi and I had told me. Say something. She pulled him back and forth, but Shinku pushed her away to get free, before biting his lips and shaking his head. You're a spineless coward. Come on. Say something. Anything. I shouldn't have said anything to begin with, he muttered back. Oh no, 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 and no once more, Shin-chan. Naruko exclaimed, pulling her right hand forward to grip at his jacket's folds. You're not getting away until you tell me. Don't let it be. Sasuke said, he said more than enough. Come on, stop it. I'm not going to give you any ramen if you don't say something, Shin-chan, Naruko said with a warning tone. I'm not kidding, I'm not. Shinka remained silent. Naruko's growling grew louder, before she closed her eyes and exhaled once, deeply. Then, the pushed him away with enough strength to send him barreling on the sand. I'm not sharing food with a coward who can't even trust his friends. Dope. I'm done talking. We are going to eat ramen. He can try and fish something with his dead last, incapable of doing anything skills. Sasuke gave him a sorry look, as the girl appeared firm in her proposal. It's all right, Shinku muttered from his spot on the sand, slowly standing up and taking a deep breath. He wasn't going to cry for something like this. He had called it down on himself to begin with. Shinku simply turned and began to walk away. Yeah, that's right. Walk away in silence, you pathetic bastard. Naruko's eyes began to water as Shinku disappeared back into the village. She crossed her arms over her chest and huffed. You better be sorry next time we see each other. Maybe you'll have ramen then. She sniffled. Sasuke exhaled and slowly brought a hand to his face. You really had to go and say all of that, right? You heard him. He has no idea what it means to be a team player. He has no idea. Naruko sniffled some more. You are a reckless idiot, Sasuke deadpanned. No matter how much I dislike it, Kakashi's words are still those of a Jounin and his words are law out of Konoha. Shinku could land in hot waters for saying something he wasn't even supposed to say to begin with. I don't care, she huffed, crossing her arms over her chest. You helping me get a fire going to boil the water, or you try flashing the fishes. I'll find some wood, Sasuke muttered. Shinku, meanwhile, was holding his tears inside. He had been stupid and reckless, and now this had happened. Well, he couldn't go back and erase it, and changing the past or memories was beyond his abilities. He walked back into the village, his gaze low. After a few steps, he heard a few noises up ahead, and soon his eyes rose to catch up with the square filled with people he had ended up in. Hanging from a rope was a corpse, the crows and the seagulls pecking it repeatedly to the point where even the face was unrecognizable. To the sides, Shinku muttered, his eyes snapping to his sides. There were only civilians, a few mumbling about the poor girl and, just like Kaiza. The body's arms had been cleanly cut, their extremities sewed then back together in a pleading gesture and emerging from her body. The worst was how her tattered dress wasn't made of normal cloth, but of flailed skin. Shinku felt sick. A hand to his mouth, he closed his eyes sharply and breathed. He clenched his free hand in a fist and opened his eyes once more, grounding his teeth furiously as he forced the bile back down his stomach. That was a body. A failure of someone who couldn't survive. Like in the cave, it was nothing that could kill him. He couldn't show any weakness, or he would die. His eyes narrowed, as he carefully took the optimal option. He walked away. He wasn't going to get mixed into this. He'd let. What the hell? Hibachi yelled. Shinku widened his eyes. Team 4 had to be at the bridge protecting Tajuna, not at the square. If they were there, his eyes sharply moved to where Tajuna actually was, with Hibachi's team escorting him. Ami brought a hand to her mouth and then retched to the side, soon joined by Kota. Their Jounin looked slightly shaken by the scene, before regaining her composure. She was the one who stepped forward. What is going on? She asked softly, passing through the crowd and reaching for the center of the square where the corpse hung. Silently, a Kirigakure shinobi, the one wielding the thin sword, appeared from his hiding spot. Caught stealing, the voice, like a cracked disc, spoke. Punished? Stealing? From ghetto? Was she mad? A few women whispered to one another, holding their hands tightly to their chests. Their voices were low, but he was passing right behind them so he heard the snippets. Just like Kaiza, the poor man, you think it's tsunami. I hope not, Tajuna wouldn't survive the shock. Shinku's eyes met with those of the kimono-wearing girl from the chemist shop, who was watching the scene with apathy for but a single instant, before her eyes filled with fear. Fear at seeing him gaze at her normal face. A normal, cold, and uncaring face had been what his eyes had seen, the one of a hunter, not a prey. He wasn't fooled. He couldn't be, because he was the same. It had been a second. But he wasn't like his outer self. Her kimono, when put next to those of the nearby street women, was too new, too clean, and too good. Even a whore nearby didn't have one as good as hers, and that was what cinched it in his mind. He began to push through the crowd, heading in the opposite direction and towards Tajuna. The kimono girl followed him then, her face now cold and her eyes narrow, at least in Shinku's imagination. Maybe she had left for somewhere else, maybe she was pursuing him, but in any event he would move closer to the rest of the genin. There was safety in numbers. What are you doing here? He asked, reaching for the trio of genin. Hibachi was the first to recover, looking at him with disdain. Someone came to tell us of a corpse in the square, and... Is that Tsunami? Tajuna said with his voice cracked, is that my daughter? No, Shinku replied curtly. Now get back to the bridge. We don't take orders from you, Hibachi hissed. I'm your superior on the field, Shinku retorted. You do, and you brought the man you were supposed to protect somewhere he isn't meant to be. Now bring him back to the bridge, genin. Being with the big guns rotted your head, Shinku. Hibachi grumbled. Tell me, did you have to suck the Uchiha's dick to get where? Hibachi was slow. He hadn't really realized it until that moment. This wasn't Shinku, scared of hurting someone else during a spar and wincing while staying on the defensive. This wasn't Shinku, dead last of the academy, who barely scraped by. This was Shinku, who wanted them to move so he could have an excuse to follow them out of the area. This was Shinku, who had a psychopathic sensei and enough anger fueling through his body that it didn't matter what Hibachi thought or wanted, they would follow his lead, because he was stronger. His fist struck Hibachi straight in the throat, sending him to gurgle as the boy's hands gripped his neck. The genin coughed and rasped, but Shinku held onto the brat's throat. I gave you an order to move, Shinku snarled. If you can't follow it, stop being a shinobi and go back to your parents' house playing with dolls. With that he pushed Hibachi on the ground without a second thought, before curtly gripping onto Tajuna's arm. We're going back to the bridge, it's not safe here. That's really not my daughter. Tajuna looked at him, his eyes filled with hope. She isn't, he replied firmly, albeit he knew he was lying through his teeth because he had no idea at all. Move you two, he snapped towards Kota and Ami, Hibachi can stay here if he likes it so much. He knew he was going to get in hot waters with the Jounin sensei of Team 4 afterwards. He just knew it, but still, anywhere was better than that place. Behind him, unseen and unheard, Haku disappeared in a flicker. He had seen enough to make an informed guess, and he was probably right with his results. Zabuza was calmly cleaning his sword when Haku returned still wearing his kimono. Zabuza-sama, Haku said, I have completed my observations. So? What is your final assessment? The Jounin Sharinon no Kakashi is beyond my expertise. Of the other Jounin, the woman with purple hair sensed me before I could get in an optimal position for a shot, but I managed to slip by unnoticed right next to the other one, the brown-haired woman in charge of the first team that came to wave. What of the boy? Anything special? You don't get into a team with the Yondame's daughter and an Uchiha without something to pull you through the ringer. I think. Haku bit his lips, before replying with his tone extremely serious, I think he is an Umbu. Oh. Zabuza raised an eyebrow, before chuckling. What makes you think that? He acts like a harmless boy, smiling and speaking little. He looks unthreatening and yet remained standing after training with Sharinon no Kakashi from what I could observe. His teammates both fell on the ground knocked out, yet he held his ground fighting with extreme prowess and bringing the Jounin to a standstill even, and he slips in and out of his work mode whenever there's a threat. He slipped while seeing the corpse, his eyes had that dark glint only murderers share. Zabuza hummed thoughtful, holding back a chuckle, then. He immediately brought to safety the bridge builder before I could try and assassinate him while under the Konoha's ninja's protection, and I think there's one more Jounin who has yet to arrive. They called him Guy, and from what I heard he is supposed to be here before the end of the day, or by tomorrow. Another Jounin further complicates things, Zabuza grumbled. Yagura really wants his alliance with IWA to work, but we can't fall into another war without being on the right side for once. The samurai won't let it slide like last time, and Kumo and Suna would do short work of us, especially after the last war and the Sanbai's predecessor's fate. I could take the hidden Umbu out by surprise however, Haku said then, I am confident in my skills Zabuza-sama. Let me take him out, with one Umbu less, there would be. The Jinhiriki are an even greater nuisance, Zabuza mumbled. We need to take those out first. The man grumbled, closing his eyes. No, it's too much of a chore right now, we'll try this at another place. Try to get the Konoha genin to make a mistake. One of them is bound to be a hot-blooded idiot, you will exploit that to cause a diplomatic incident. We of Kiri believe in an eye for an eye after all. Zabuza smiled. And more times than not, we claim more than our due. Haku nodded. He just knew the person. Hibachi was not having a good day. Not only had the dead last passed him by, but also he had all but wrestled control of the team from him, the admittedly self-appointed team leader of Team 4. The worst was that their sensei had wholeheartedly agreed with his classmates' opinion of getting away from the square. Really? How unfair could someone be when it was a friend of the Uchiha clan and of the daughter of the Yondame doing things? He received harsh criticism for half the things he did, and yet, apparently, nothing Shinku did could be wrong. Even Ami hung to him, asking questions about Sasuke's favorite food while Kota insisted about getting to know the Sharingan's abilities. Shinku didn't even answer, his snob attitude not deterring his teammates even once from pestering him. The boy gazed at him once more, and Hibachi spat to his side and turned to look away. Just staring at Shinku made him angry. If he had ended up with the awesome team, he wouldn't have lied about it being uncool or a chore. The boy had the guts of lying to him, saying it meant nothing and was nothing more than a hassle or a nightmare. Grounding his teeth, Hibachi looked over once more, to where the Jounin of his team, Mai Sensei, was talking with Shinku in a low whispered voice. The way the boy behaved, already acting all buddy-buddy with his sensei, as if he belonged into the flak jacket, made blood rush to his head. How dared he? Hibachi! His sensei called him, and suddenly he realized what was going on. Shinku was getting revenge on him. For some reason or another, the boy had decided to make his life hell. Well, he wasn't going to take it standing down, oh no. He was going to show the dead last just who was. Have you been talking with a slender girl, raven hair, and a bright new kimono? Mai asked him curtly, as his ears began to burn. She was probably referring to Haku. What was the problem if he talked with a cute girl? She worked at the chemist shop and had a pretty kimono and, she had beautiful slender hands and pale rose lips. Yeah, so what? He drawled back. What did you tell her? Mai asked once more. Nothing much, Hibachi shrugged, just small talk. About what? When I ask you a question I want a clear answer, young man. Why are you asking me this, sensei? Whatever the dead last is saying doesn't matter anyway. He's got his head filled with. Your neck is starting to bruise, Shinka remarked dryly. Shut up and answer, Hibachi. I can take it from here, Harano-kun, Mai replied, you can go and warn the other teams. Shinku nodded, before turning to leave. He walked once more through the square, exhaling in relief the corpse was no longer there, they had probably taken it down. He moved past, towards the direction of the beach where he hoped his two teammates still were. He'd warn them, before moving on. Nothing prohibited him from being professional after all. The beach was devoid of life however. There was no one, and on the ground, the scattered remains of a fire pit and cooked ramen stood as a sign of Nariko's passage. The girl had eaten at least half a dozen of ramen cups. Where did she pack it all to begin with? One cup remained close, with a Nariko drawing on it that seemed to be giving the reader a sticking the tongue out message. It remained unopened atop a light metallic grid, and beneath it were the words. I clearly forgot this here by mistake. Clearly, I have no need to eat this too and I will leave it as an offering to the seagulls. His lips actually twitched into a light smile. He'd make his excuses the moment he saw them. There was no need to hold a grudge over something he had no power on, and he'd tell them the entire story. In for a ryo, in for 1,000 of ryos went the proverb. Shinku opened the steaming ramen cup and ate. The chopsticks weren't far off on the sand yet carefully wrapped in a paper napkin. He smiled as he slurped down on the treat. In his taking charge he had completely forgotten about having lunch. The moment he was done, he began to clean around. The cups were dropped one on top of the other and then pushed to the side next to an already big pile of refuse made mostly of rotten fishes, which was both the source of the horrid smell and the garbage dump of the beach. He began to wait for his teammates to return. They couldn't have gone far, leaving that ramen cup behind like that. It took him 5 minutes of silence, before his ears picked up a sound. A low rumbling came from further away, just past a curve on the sandy beach. He remembered that sound. It was the sound of chakra so powerful it could lash at the very air while making strange noises as it cut the wind. It was the Kyuubi's, so filled with malice and hatred that his own blood froze from the mere thought it could have been freed, and not just because of what it would entail. He ran, holding his breath short as he pushed past the sandy ground and into the water, standing atop of it as he gained speed with his skiing on its surface. He saw it then, and he cursed under his breath. Standing a good distance away from shore on an icy surface surrounded by floating icebergs, was the Umbu masked boy of the Kirigakure team. He held senbon needles in his hands and was currently throwing them at Nariko, who tried to charge at the Kirigakure shinobi. Sasuke instead was on the shore, his body upwards and his entire frame still. Needles emerged from his skin and muscles, glinting in the light as the boy's body remained still and dead. For once, Shinku hoped this was simply an illusion. The roars and the screams, however, they all felt and were real. You bastard! Nariko's extended chakra arm slammed in the floating iceberg that moved to block the way to the masked Umbu, making it sizzle and burn away as the giant ice cube soon became mist. The mist then morphed into ice lances that shot right back at the girl while another iceberg formed, hence repeating the cycle. Shinku made his way towards the shore then, reaching for Sasuke's body as his hand moved to the boy's neck for a pulse. Standard Academy first aid was all about checking the pulse, but with the noise of the battlefield and his heart drumming in his chest. The senbon needles were made of ice. He realized that after a few seconds spent wondering over their strange form. They were crystalline and transparent. The sun itself had already melted a few of them down into small puddles on Sasuke's chest. This was everything Kakashi had said could happen. The enemy had caught them by surprise and, Rather than immediately fight back with everything, Sasuke had gone down before activating the main Jakua. After that, Naruko had gone Kyuubi but was already losing her mind to her rage. Wonderful, so this was precisely what that bastard of a sensei wanted. He wanted him as the intermediary between the two and the rest of the frigging world. He wanted someone who had no qualms lying, getting his hands dirty or stopping the other two when things went south. Kakashi wanted an overglorified babysitter to step in when things went sour like in this case. He couldn't just run away now. Kakashi had been pretty clear on the consequences, but he couldn't even start a war over it. The ice was soon going to melt from the needles, and then, why remain then? There was Naruko. Shinku's eyes widened. Come back here now, he yelled. The girl didn't hear him, incensed as she was and growling. If Sasuke died without any wounds on his body and Naruko was the one found attacking the Kirigakure, this would explain why the shinobi was taking time rather than dealing with Naruko immediately. He had to stop Naruko. In the middle of mist, steam, and ice, he had to run right there to stop the feral and out for blood Naruko. He doubted a fist to the head would be enough. Shinku clenched his fists. He knew this could only be Kakashi's doing. If not his doing, then he had to know this would happen. It was the only explanation. The only reason. There wasn't another. Maybe the man had only suspected the Kirigakure shinobi would start something. Still, the man was asking him to run ahead and interrupt a fight between an Anbu and a Jinchuriki. The man was asking him to die. He wasn't going to die. He gripped on the handle of one of his kunao and then took a deep breath. He knew Kawarimi, Bunshin, and Henge. He knew how to walk on water, on trees, and how to climb a tree without chakra. He knew how to kill a sleeping man. He didn't know how to stop a rampaging Jinchuriki and a Kirigakure able to create ice from water, while standing on a frigging lake. This is officially, he mumbled, the melted chocolate's fault. I wholeheartedly agree, his other self replied, and I am against going in there, Shinku. But, if I go in there, will you take us out? You actually have the guts to go in there, Shinku. His inner self whispered. This is suicidal. Ah, I know, he chuckled bitterly, but I just need to put myself in front of Naruko. How hard will that be? A swipe of crimson red sliced apart another iceberg. That was a rhetoric question. She's not going to attack me, Shinku muttered. She isn't. Right, because you left with the best of words. Well, I'm off. What's going on here? Tenten exclaimed as she appeared, Fu apparently carrying both her and Niji with her chakra wings. They need to stop fighting immediately, Inner Shinku barked out, this is going to become a diplomatic incident if it keeps up. Fu? Can you bring Naruko back here? What the hell? He was sending Fu in the middle of there? He was sending someone else in his place. This. All right. She hastily agreed, smiling brightly as she flew straight off without even wondering over it for a split second. Any of you two knows medical ninjutsu? Enough to check on Sasuke's status. Niji's Byakugan pulsed, as Tenten got down next to the boy. The long minute of silence that followed passed by with Shinku's eyes glued on Fu's light green-covered form slamming into the red one of Naruko, before the Takigakure Kunoichi gripped on her and pulled her away. The Kirigakure turned to gaze at the shore then, and their eyes met. The man seemed keen on starting something, but it was then that Shinku waved at the man. Nice sparring, he exclaimed, but we need the girl back now. Sparring? Tenten mouthed in surprise, her eyes wide. The Uchiha is still alive, Niji acquiesced. His pulse is weak, but he is still alive. Then the Anbu flickered right in front of Shinku. Shinku kept a smile on his face. This training has gone on long enough, don't you think? He stressed out, cocking his head to the side. I'm sure from an external point of view it might have seemed like a battle, and what a grievous mistake it could have been for diplomacy if someone ended up dying, but training is training, no matter how hard it is, right? The mask remained quiet. To foster relationships between the two villages, sometimes a bit of joint training is good and nice, right? Shinku hissed once more. The masked man stilled, before his neck moved past Shinku and to somewhere else in the middle of the forest. Then, as if receiving an unseen command, The Umbu nodded. Very well, Shinku clapped his hands, putting back the kunao in his hand in his pouch. Next time however, do warn the higher UPS before training starts. Someone might misunderstand gravely such actions. Then the Umbu from Kiri disappeared in a flicker the next. Shinku exhaled, clasping at his chest and then turning his gaze back to the rest of the assembled genin. Nariko's eyes were still crimson, but Fu was pinning her down on the sand. Let me at him. Nariko yelled. He. Sasuke. He's still alive, Niji stated plainly once more, this time towards Nariko. His pulse is weak, but he's still alive. I know that. Nariko screamed, taking a deep breath as her eyes returned blue. But that bastard called Konoha weak after trashing the Uke. And you began to fight him, Shinku replied. Let me guess, he caught you by surprise. Nariko blinked. Well, no. He actually said he wanted to train with us to see if we were all that strong. The girl had the guts to giggle nervously. Then Sasuke went down in a flash and Shinku made a strangled noise in the back of his mind. Anyway, Nariko continued with a pout, I'm not talking to you. She huffed and turned her head to the side. Shinku blinked. They had just survived an encounter with an Umbu from Kirigakure and the girl was already pouting and bantering once more. Ahem, Shinku coughed. Anyway, I have to warn you. Not listening. Nariko kneeled down next to Sasuke, who was still unconscious. Not listening. There might be a raven-haired girl going around in a kimono, he stated plainly over the sounds of the not listening of Nariko. She's a spy and probably a member of the Kirigakure forces, he added. Her cover was of working at the chemist's shop, so it is highly possible she has been here for quite a while. What do the Jounin want then? Niji asked stiffly. It is highly prudent if we all regroup with our Jounin-sensei. Since yours is still missing, you will be temporarily assigned to Uzuki-sensei. Niji scoffed. So we have to move with the escort. Yes, you have to. Shouldn't we carry him back to Tajuna's house? Tenten asked, pointing at the downed body of Sasuke. Nariko had taken out a black marker, and was already starting to draw on the boy's face. Why is she doing that? Fu asked between giggles. I don't want to know, Shinku replied. Somehow, he felt extremely tired after the entire ordeal. He wanted nothing more than to return beneath the covers and fall asleep again, to wake up back in his room without any of this nonsense of diplomatic accidents and similar. He felt a headache pounding away at the back of his head. Still, he had done well once more, and he was still breathing. Chapter 34, Killing Hope. You knew this situation would develop, Shinku bitterly shot at Kakashi, the moment his eyes met with the lone one of the wandering Jounin who just so casually appeared from nowhere after a few steps in the village. There was a limit to chance and casual events. This wasn't random. This was a plan. Sasuke was on Nariko's back, yet to regain consciousness. The girl held a smile plastered on her face as she chuckled every now and then. The Uchiha's face was covered in scribble marks and words like uke and crude drawings of things. You said something. Kakashi remarked while closing his ika. Anyway, the man said, the bridge will be completed tomorrow, thanks to the hasty arrival of your Jounin-sensei. He turned to Niji and Tenten. He and your third teammate are currently working at the bridge with Tajuna. Their fires of youth will do a good job at it. Chuckling, he then began to hum. Why were they late? Tenten asked warily, did something happen? No, guy just took a detour to be more youthful, Kakashi replied with a shrug. Well, let me take you lot to the bridge, Uzuki-san is already there anyway. Shinku exhaled in relief. The mission was going to be over by tomorrow. The following day, they'd all be leaving Wave behind. That was the plan. The bridge saw two green blurs working hard, their loud screams and incessant ramblings of youth and fire echoing around. Shinku warily glanced around. Where are the Kiri? One flickered down in that instant. Amairi Ringo held a bright shark-like smile on her face as she placed both hands to her hips. Well, I couldn't believe my eyes the first time, but now, the tasty little morsels have simply grown again. Her face morphed into a scowl. A noisy morsel that will give me a headache, she gazed at Guy. You were scared of being outnumbered, Sharinon no Kakashi. Kakashi hummed, who? Me. He shrugged. Why would I be? There are peace treaties between us. The woman just snorted at him, before turning her eyes towards the genin. She licked her lips, her eyes glinting dangerously. Some of them appear succulent, she chuckled softly. They are not food, Yojao stated then, appearing from the side and just so casually placing herself in front of Shinku. Ameirai-san. Are you going to take your leave soon? The Kirigakure swordswoman was probably more appropriate asked while licking the tip of her teeth. We couldn't even play a little bit. That is unfortunate, Kakashi stated suddenly, why not try a joint training? It would. The death glare of Yojao silenced Kakashi on the spot, especially because it added to the one of Naruko and surprisingly Fu. Kakashi nii. Come on. She pouted, I've got duck butt still knocked out. What is it, you're giving us crap because dad decided to give you crap? Exactly, Kakashi nodded, holding up a smile. He admitted it so fast Shinku could only sigh and raise an eyebrow in perplexity. Really? He didn't even try to deny it? Oh, poor thing, the woman said as she locked on Sasuke's prone form. Is he going to be alright? Yes, Shinku stated plainly, before Naruko could get a word in. He tried to train with your Kiryumbu, of course, he was foolish enough not to take it seriously and the result is as you see, nothing more. Nothing more? A pity I wasn't there to watch the scene. Naruko was about to say something, but in that moment Sasuke groaned. In an instant, the girl dropped the Uchiha hard on the ground and clapped her hands as if to say good riddance. Ouch, Sasuke hissed. What, hit me? You lost, Naruko remarked dryly. I had to carry your sorry uke butt all the way back here, really, you're heavy. Ah, yes, yawning, Sasuke carefully stood back on his feet opening and closing his hands. He slapped his cheeks afterwards, his sight returning in full. Thanks, dope. Naruko grunted with her lips twitching. Sasuke's gaze returned sour as he gazed at Naruko. The girl simply whistled innocently. How fun, the swordsman said, makes me want to have kids of my own, she chuckled once more. Kakashi hummed, slowly flipping through the pages of his Ika as he ignored everything else around him. Was there anything you wanted to tell us, Ameirai-san? Yojao stressed out each word, noticeably straining the courteous tone. Oh, yes, the Kirigakure Jounin acquiesced. Just wanted to make my condolences to that poor bridge builder, really, for his daughter to turn out that bad. Shinku froze. What? Naruko asked. Oh, you didn't see the corpse in the square. The swordsman smiled brightly, she tried to steal from Gato last night, we dealt with her quite ruthlessly. She was screaming when we managed to stab her through the back with her own arms. The work of the Nuiberi is never to be underestimated. With a dreamy tone, the woman chuckled once more. Tsunami-san is dead. Naruko muttered, before whipping her head round right to where Shinku was. She's dead. Yes, Shinku acquiesced, grimly looking downwards. He didn't actually sense the fist coming as it slammed against his face, breaking his nose and sending him to fall down hard on the ground. Naruko hovered over him, fist clenched in fury. Shinku's right hand went to his nose, as blood copiously fell from it. This is your entire fault, Naruko curtly snarled, before trying to stomp away in a fury. Kakashi gripped her by the shoulder the next instant, halting her furious retreat. You are not going anywhere, he said calmly. You already forgot what you were told. I don't want to see him anymore, Naruko ground out. A pity, but you'll have to live with it. Shinku stood back up, wiping away the blood as he pinched his nose, setting it in one quick jab while hissing to hold his pain in. Ameirai whistled. Trouble in Konoha's paradise, Well, I've got to head over anyway. She cackled. See you, brats. With that, she strolled away. You understand you cannot act like this in front of foreign shinobi, Kakashi seriously stated. Even if you hate the guts of someone else, you cannot show it if he's your ally and you're in front of someone else. But he. And in the end, I'm the one who delivered him an order, which he wasn't even supposed to tell you, but he did so anyway apparently. With that Kakashi's lone eye settled on Shinku. I am extremely disappointed, then he rolled his eye, of both of you. Kakashi and I. That's not. I don't want to hear any excuses. You are part of a team and as such, you are responsible for your teammates. You do not attack your teammates. You do not show how much you hate their guts in front of others. And no, you will not change team just because you don't like Shinku anymore. Naruto, you must do as you're told. Tajuna's footsteps stomped loudly as he neared. Shinku's eyes widened as another fist came down for him, but this time he managed to step back and avoid it. You lied to me? Tajuna's angry scream came together with his face too close for Shinku's personal tastes. Red-faced and enraged, the bridge builder tried to grab onto the boy's jacket, only for him to avoid the tackle once more. I'm SOR. Is this all that Konoha shinobi are worth? Tajuna yelled then, his eyes turning to Kakashi and Yojao. You couldn't even protect my daughter. His eyes began to water. Why? Why? Our duty was to protect you, Tajuna-san, Yojao replied softly. We are sorry for your loss. No, you aren't, Tajuna snarled back. You would have looked out for Tsunami if you actually cared at all. You don't care about Wave, you don't care about its people, you don't care about the bridge. All you care about is the money and nothing more. That's not true. Naruto shot back, we wanted to help, really. I don't believe you, any of you, Tajuna snorted. Get the hell out of my house, I don't need you. Shinku's eyes noticed movement, and he instinctively tensed as a mob of people, both villagers and armed thugs, appeared. Team 4 was actually standing contrived in a corner, the three genin pale as sheets, while a stocky and small-sized man well-dressed walked forward. The man clapped his hands, and then emitted a loud laughter. Well, look what's going on here, the man chuckled with glee. Having problems, Tajuna-san? You should sit and rest, at your age, heart attacks are pretty common. Geto! Tajuna roared, taking a step forward. The Kirigakure shinobi appeared then in front of the businessman. The villagers had been hoarded in by two menacing Chiryunin with horns on their forehead protectors, holding their hands close to the handle of their swords. Indeed, and, you know, I had great plans, the man began to speak, carefully taking a few more steps forward. You would complete the bridge, I would acquire it, a normal business transaction. The man's face held a cunning smile, like that of a predator ready to eat his prey. Then your darling daughter tried to appeal to me. She pleaded to spare the village, but, you see, in the end you're all ants against money, Gato laughed. I have more money than the daimyo of the Land of Waves, I have more money than Tsunagakure has, and I know when to make a very good deal with other villages. You killed Tsunami, you sick bastard. Tajuna yelled. I'm not going to finish the bridge for you. Oh, but I don't need you anymore, Gato said. The bridge is practically finished. The great Gato bridge that will last for hundreds of years. He turned thoughtful, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. I'll tear it down. Tajuna yelled, I'll break it apart with my own hands. Ah, yes, apparently, some villagers still held on to some inkling of hope. Well, I can't have that now, can I? Gato nodded to the masked Umbu with the thin sword. The man produced a sack from his back, a dark, crimson with blood, sack. What? I was merciful, once. I simply took the life of the troublemaker's ringleader. Anyone here remembers Kaiza? Gato turned to look at the crowd, bringing his right hand up. Anyone? Come on, don't be shy, you remember Kaiza and what I did to him? Well, I was being kind. Now I'm no longer kind. The Kiri swordsman threw the bag in front of Tajuna, where it landed with a wet squelch. What is in the bag, bastard? Tajuna asked. Well. Gato hummed, did you see your grandchild anywhere recently? Tajuna's blood left his face as he stared at the canvas sack. No. Tajuna moaned. No. And I can't have you destroy your work, it wouldn't do for the future of the land, you know, of Gato's land. Then, Gato nodded. You heard the man, didn't you? He turned towards Kakashi. I'm the one who hired your team and I paid you quite a bit too. He wants to destroy the bridge. Kill him. OHI, Naruko yelled back. What the hell, man? We aren't taking orders from. We are, Kakashi replied. I said so, didn't I? He turned to look at Naruko. We have been paid to bring more supplies and protect the bridge. The one who paid us, who chipped in, was Mr. Gato. Wait, we're working for the bad guy here. Naruko yelled. What the fuck, Kakashi and I. Dope, shut up, Sasuke hissed. It makes sense. Who else had the money to hire the entire team? Ah, Uchiha-sama, Gato said with a light grin, send my regards to your father, and, well, if the Uchiha clan wishes to speak of business in acquiring some of the finest clothes or steel from all over the world, Gato's shipping lines are always ready to help. You can't be serious. Tajuna yelled. You. He turned to Team 4, you were paid by the people of the village to protect me. Against bandits, Mai said, her voice tight. Not fellow shinobi of the Leave or enemy shinobi. Tajuna's eyes widened as the true face of despair finally sunk in his cheeks and his bones, his entire body trembled as he breathed in deeply. No, the bridge. Even Mato Guy and Rock Lee stood behind, with Guy holding firmly a hand on Lee's shoulder, and another on his mouth. Some things just had to be. The bridge is supposed to be the hope of the village, Tajuna whispered. Why would you want it? It frees my shipping lines, Gato shrugged. It was built basically for free, and with it I can divert 5 to 6 barges to more lucrative profit between Kirigakure and Kumigakure, which, by the way, is the reason the Mizukage made me such a kind deal. OHI, Zabuza grumbled, affairs are private. My bad, Gato shrugged. I'm just a businessman. I deal with money and contracts. Shinobi are the ones who trade secrets. So, tasty-looking morsels, Amairi laughed with her high-pitched tone. What is it going to be? Is the All Might Sherry-non no Kakashi going to kill the bridge builder? Is it going to be the spoiled princess of the Yondaime? Oh, will it be the Uchihas first? Is he going to pop his blood cherry? Kakashi mulled it over, who wants to do it? Only shocked silence remained next. Niji's hands sweated, as he took a step forward. If it is inevitable, then I will make it quick and painless. No, Niji. You do not have to do it, Mato Guy said, his voice finally reaching their ears for the first time with a serious tone, rather than the usual yosh. As your teacher, I will take. No, Kakashi drawled. Let the genin do it. They need to kill something eventually, and an old man seems like a nice and good start. His eyes moved over his own troop. You killed anyone already, Fu? Fu nodded, her face slightly green as she gripped onto Shinka's sleeve. Well then, Kakashi looked towards Naruko and Sasuke. Who wants the honor? You're a sick man, Sasuke hissed. I'll do it. OHI. No. Naruko yelled, gripping onto Sasuke's arm. You're not. I'm not. Nobody is. You can't just kill a man like that. That's not. Shinku. Kakashi said, placing a hand over the boy's shoulder. You are the Chiryunin in command of the Genin Corps, choose someone to make the kill. Hey, take-san. Yojao hissed. Hush, hush, Kakashi dismissed her with a hand wave. One of the first lessons of command is to know who to send. But another is to not order something you wouldn't do yourself, Guy spoke crisply. I will do it, my hip rival. No, Kakashi stressed out with a low growl. My cute little genin will participate in the upcoming Chiryunin exams. That perked the ears of Zabuza right up, they need all the experience they can get, Kakashi smiled. Shinku-kun, choose. WH. Wait. Tajuna yelled, bringing his hands up. I was joking. I don't really care about the bridge. I'll let it be. There's no need to kill me if I don't care about the bridge, right? Kakashi turned to gaze at Gato. The assassination of a civilian target rings in the 55,000s Ryos. Gato shrugged. That's the money I wipe my ass with, the man chuckled. I'll give double the amount if whoever kills him makes him scream. 110,000 ryos. Kakashi whistled. It's not bad at all. No, Naruko hissed. I'm not going. I'll do it, Shinku snarled, taking a step forward. Fu let go of his sleeve, looking at him in surprise. Naruko's hand shot forward to grip his arm, but Shinku took a step backwards, slamming his elbow straight in the girl's stomach. It was like hitting an iron wall. What type of stomach did that girl have to begin with? But it distracted her enough to let him move ahead of her. Kakashi gripped tightly on Naruko's shoulders, pinning her on the spot. You're nothing more than a murderer for hire, boy. Tajuna yelled, turning around to run. Shinku's feet gripped on the ground as he shot forward, his speed far higher than that of a civilian. He twisted his body then, bringing his right leg forwards to crash against the old man's hind leg. It cracked and broke with a clean snap, as Tajuna screamed while falling down on the ground. Shinku's left hand gripped the man by the neck. There was no flashy show of jutsu. There was nothing but the smell of rotten fish and sweat as Shinku's digits gripped tightly on the man's neck with his left while his right palmed a kunao. The handle of the kunao shattered Tajuna's teeth. The kunao sunk in the man's cheeks and tore them, blood dripping down as the old man's screams echoed in a little side of Shinku's brain the boy was keen on ignoring. The screams of fear, of fright, of disgust, the retching sounds that the back of his mind desperately pleaded him to make stop meant nothing to him as he continued. 110,000 ryos was more than a hefty sum. He had never seen such a sum to begin with. 1,000 ryo generally was the pay to each single member after a D rank. 60 ryo was the cost of a normal miso ramen. 110,000 ryos on the other hand, there was a small part of him that claimed the money would be used for his retirement. Another part, the right one, knew the truth. If his parents overworked to keep the bakery floating, then more money was bound to bring them back home sooner, right? It was the childish thought that a side of his brain whispered to give reason and logic to what he was doing. He was murdering the dreams and the hopes of the villagers, he was condemning them to die of hunger, but it was his job. He had accepted it. The screams died without Shinku even realizing it, and when he stood up once more, his hands were both covered in the blood of Tajuna, big droplets of crimson falling down as he smiled. So, where's the cash? I give it a 5, the Umbu wielding the thin sword stated with his cracked voice. Repetitive, not enough toying. Oh, come on, the kid's done fine for the first time, a mayor I shot back, I say a 7 for the effort of the morsel. I'll give a 6, the man wielding the giant hammer and the sword said then. It was vicious enough, but it lacked imagination. Gato began to count out the money with his hands, as Shinku's body simply neared him in the astonishing silence that came from the Konoha side. Kakashi hummed his agreement, while Yojao shot the Joun in a dark and foreboding look. Zabuza took a step forward. Shinku tensed, but still took another step. Zabuza's hand slowly went to the handle of his blade. Shinku still moved forward. And 110,000s, for the red-eyed boy who gave me such a nice spectacle. With a cheerful voice, which cracked apart the eerie silence around them, Gato handed over the bundle of money into Shinku's hands. The money colored itself red, but Shinku gripped on it and didn't let go. If you ever find yourself in need of work, Gato Shipping Lines is more than willing to give it to young and upstarting shinobi, the businessman continued. We make no recrimination on missing nin status or alliance to a particular village. I'll keep that in mind, Shinku replied. He gave his back to Zabuza as he moved away. The fourth step he took, Zabuza spoke for the first time. Hey, kid, Shinku turned just in time to see a curved blade kunao spin straight for his feet, before it landed with a solid thunk on the ground. That's a Kirigaku or kunao. They're better for slicing throats than whatever crap Konoha gives out. You ever feel like switching side from the Sons and Daisies to the real shinobi, just come on over and say Zabuza's vouching for you. Shinku gripped on the handle of the kunao as he pulled it free. Why? Ah, you even have to ask, kid. Zabuza chuckled as his back began to turn purple. In front of Shinku's eyes, a demon-like form appeared from the man's back with pure crimson eyes and foreboding claws. Because you and I are the same, right? Shinku swallowed then, and then he chuckled and began to laugh out, his cracked voice soon mixing with that of Zabuza. To all the others, it looked as if two lunatics had found each other. To Zabuza, It was like looking at his younger self. Trapped in the middle of the Kirigakure Graduation Academy, scared out of his wits and with nothing to carry him on, he had killed to survive. He had killed to live. He had killed, until none had remained save him, and his demon. He was the demon of Kiri, and in that instant, he probably was watching yet another demon beginning his climbing up from the gutters like him. "I'll be sure to come watch the Genin exams," Zabuza said then as the laughter died out. "They're bound to be interesting this year for sure." "No thanks, you're not needed nor welcomed," Yojao said curtly as she appeared right next to Shinku like an angry mother, or something similar. "We will take our leave now." Shinku's face held on to his half-crazy smile until he was back in the Konoha group. Shinku's smile turned into a grimace and then into a sorrowful expression, as Nariko spat at his feet and turned around, completely ignoring him. Fu looked at him with a worry-filled expression, her right hand up in the air as if to touch the side of his face, yet she flinched when their eyes met and she lowered her hand. Tenten had a green face. Niji remained stiffly uncaring, which was strangely a welcome sight. Suzuki's eyes actually worried him. Nariko's own told him he probably had burned all bridges with the girl, but Suzuki's, they glinted with some sort of understanding that did not make him feel well at all. What if he found out? No, even worse, what if he had found out? "I hope you have learned your lesson," Gato's voice rose once more, this time turned towards the people of Wave. "Why do you insist on fighting the progress anyway? Your village is done for. Go elsewhere and build your mud huts somewhere it doesn't hurt the scenery." The corpse of Tajuna on the ground, the bloodied sack with Inari's corpse inside, they both remained on the concrete of the bridge for the following hours. Silence, interrupted only by the seagulls and the ravens hungry for the rotten corpses, was all that remained to the people as they closed their eyes to mutter a soft prayer to the deceased. "Well," Kakashi said as they walked their way back. The mission was completed with success. His carefree tone ground against Shinku's nerves. It actually ground against the nerves of everyone else. Kakashi exhaled in relief, such a beautiful D-rank mission. Completed without a hitch, and Shinku-kun got a nice bonus too. Isn't it wonderful? The wonders of doing D-ranks. Hey Take-san, now is not the... Uzuki-san, now is clearly the moment. The mood is down and we must bring it back up, with the fires of youth. Kakashi's exclaiming that made Mato-gai yell straight back. Yosh! My hip and cool rival finally saw the light. You said something, Guy. Ah. How? Hip, cool and youthful? It cannot be. Nariko walked with Fu, the two Jinhyuriki ahead of Suzuki and Shinku. The two boys of Team 7 were actually at the back. Shinku was walking, as slowly as humanly possible as what he did sunk in all of its rotten glory. Suzuki on the other hand, he appeared as if he wanted to say something, but couldn't. I don't hate you for what you did, the Uchiha said then, gathering his breath. I offered myself up for doing it after all. It would be hypocrite to be angry at you, and, well, shinobi do work for money, so. I don't want to talk right now, Shinku softly whispered. You know, Suzuki said once more, I saw something on the bridge, while you and Zabuza were laughing. Shinku swallowed. It couldn't. I saw myself, Suzuki admitted. Shinku frowned. That didn't. For most of my life, I resented Itake, Suzuki whispered. He was my older brother, youngest Umbu of Konoha, Chiyunin at 10 and immediately inserted in Umbu. My father always compared me to him. Itake could do it at this age, why can't you, was his favorite sentence. I sort of hated my father too. Suzuki's eyes were downcast as he spoke. I started to do things to get noticed for myself, he said, his voice a mere shudder. Got into trouble, took a plunge with the marks which didn't work, because even giving a sheet filled with mistakes still gave me back perfect marks. Tried to prank people like Nariko. I wanted to be noticed for being myself, rather than being the younger brother of the Umbu prodigy Itake. I got my wish, Suzuki chuckled. Itake got sick, too sick to walk even, nobody knew what to do, it was useless to even try, the yondaime even roped in the slug Sunin, but it was to no avail. Suzuki bitterly spat to the side. Itake could fight on par with the yondaime in his prime and yet he died because of a sickness. I still think, to this moment, that it was my fault. The Uchiha pushed his hair back with his hands. I still think if I hadn't wished to be seen, that then my brother would still be alive. Shaking his head, Sasuke continued. I know, it sounds cheesy, the boy continued, but you don't have to do as Kakashi says to prove something to me, or to Naruto. You don't have to always accept. You don't have to say yes to that bastard simply because he's the Jounin sensei. You can say no. You can think with your head, you don't need to obey to be seen, Shinku, you don't have to hurt yourself like that. I'll talk with Naruto afterwards, when she's calmed down. Just, take a moment and understand, it's not your fault this happened. You could do nothing to change it. Those words sounded so dry and so rehearsed, it felt as if Sasuke had been repeating them for hundreds of times already. It's not your fault. Thanks. Shinku croaked out. What else are friends for? Sasuke retorted, giving him a pat on the shoulder. Ramen's on me when we get back in Konoha. Trust me, Naruto can't hate anyone while eating ramen. Alright. Sasuke nodded and then sped off. He had to talk with Naruto. Then, just to be on the safe side, he'd make investigations. There was no way a sane person would outright flip a switch and start laughing together with a Kirigaku or Jounin over one of the bloodiest kill he had ever seen. Shinku hadn't been laughing on the bridge, as much as crying out for help. He'd be a sucky teammate, if he didn't hear that plead. He couldn't save Itachi, no matter what he repeated to himself. This didn't mean he wouldn't save whoever else he could. And Shinku needed saving. Most probably, he needed saving from his own family. Chapter 35, Unquestionable Reality. Ramen time had to wait for the next day. Shinku groggily admitted he wouldn't have gone to ramen anyway, considering their return happened in the middle of the night. He winced as a light ray slammed into his face just as it did for the rest of the group, and then the gate guards opened up. Kakashi moved first, giving the probably required passcode to let them enter rather than ending skewered up by the Chunin on site. He'd hate being skewered so close to home. The thought of a bath enticed him, and as he numbly nodded his goodbye to the group he had to take a detour to reach his house. He began to walk in the silence of the crisp and clear Konoha night. He wondered how the people of the Land of Wave were sleeping now. Were they huddled together, crying in their dreams what they no longer had? Would there be even a glimmer of hope in their future? He didn't know. Strangely, he didn't even care. There had been children among the villagers, dirty and with rags. There had been women, old and frail men he had killed one too, and yet he didn't really care. The world didn't care, so why would he? Did the man he passed by, while going back home, care? Did Gato care? He doubted Gato had to take more than a cup of tea to get to sleep. He had money in his pocket, more than he had ever had before, and he didn't know what to make of it. He'd put it away in his locker box, like everything else he earned. The money was dirty and blotched red, with the blood of the man he had killed. It hadn't been a murder with a noble reason. He hadn't killed the man swiftly, because his teammates had been captured. You didn't kill the men to save your teammates. You were looking for a Takigaku or shinobi to escape Taki. He winced as his hands fumbled with the keys. He opened the door and walked inside. The smell of warm food hit his nostrils. That simple thing froze him on the spot. It was late at night. His parents were home. He was dirty and his hands caked in dried blood now glared at him like vicious stomach punches. He hadn't washed them, too taken aback by his actions to even properly think it through. He had remained quiet throughout the entire trip back, completely ignoring everything around him. The rest of the group gave him a wide berth, but now. The voice of his mother reached his ears. He stiffened as he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Shinku. She guessed from the kitchen she couldn't see him from the doorway anyway, but the sound of her footsteps pattering on the wood told him it was just a matter of moments before she came to check. She had probably been preparing the bento for the next day lunch when he returned. He croaked out. I'm home. Her head peered out from the kitchen, and then her eyes widened as she took in his sorry state. Oh my, she dropped what she was holding on the nearby counter, running right next to him to grab a hold of his cheeks with her palms. They were surprisingly warm. He felt like crying all of a sudden. He really felt like crying. What happened, dear? His mother asked, her voice worried as she looked all over him. Did you go on a mission out of Konoha? Are you already taking your C ranks? Why are you wearing a flak jacket? Was it risky? He croaked, it was a D rank, he acquiesced. He realized then, as his mother hurriedly pushed him to sit in the kitchen, that he couldn't tell her the truth. He had killed a man and earned 110,000 ryos, but he couldn't tell her. What happened? Why are your hands covered in blood? A boar, Shinku muttered. We had to take care of a boar, out of Konoha. Ah, yes, I heard there are a few boars around Konoha's countryside that sometime damage the crops. Was it big? Are you wounded? Do you need to go to the hospital? Right, you wouldn't be here if you had to go to the hospital, Mabuki shook her head. Did you help your teammates out? You aren't waiting down on them, right? Who are they, by the way? I never got around to asking you. I'm sorry, but... He hitched out, I don't really. Oh, Mabuki's eyes softened. Did they make you give the killing blow? Poor dear, she hugged him then, holding him tight. Shinku couldn't hold it in any longer. He cried. He sniffled, he sobbed, tears rolled down his eyes as he released the cry he had kept in his throat up until that very moment. SHHH, SHHH, Mabuki whispered softly, gently caressing the back of his head, it's all right, everything is going to be all right, it was just a boar, an animal, calm down. Humans are actually animals, you know. Oh, my poor boy, Mabuki muttered, maybe the life of the shinobi really isn't cut out for you. And no, he croaked out. I'm fine, I'm just tired, not really hungry. I'll let the water run then, Mabuki replied before turning to gaze at the pans. Oh, can you just make sure the food doesn't burn? Why yes. Looking at the food cooking, the smell of warm food, the noise of oil frying stuff, it was good. It felt homely. He nibbled a cookie. It was starting to become a standard reaction whenever things went down to nibble something with chocolate. He was going to become a rolling boulder if it kept up. 5 minutes later, and he sank in the warm water. 10 minutes passed by as Shinku's eyes slowly closed down, his breathing evening out as he succumbed to tiredness. He awoke with a splutter, the water coming out of his nose and mouth now icy cold. He stumbled out with a shiver, quickly wrapping himself in a towel before gazing at his reflection in the mirror of the bath. Hey there, inner Shinku remarked from the mirror. We're safe now, aren't we? His eyes were black and his hair red, a perfect mirrored image of him. Outer Shinku nodded numbly, exhaling in relief. Let's try and keep ourselves safe for a bit more, I can't always come around to save your ass, inner Shinku snapped. He twirled a kunao in the reflection, the Kirigaku are one, and frankly, I think we should worry about the Chiryunin exams or whatever, that bastard of a teacher did say he would enroll us. He wouldn't. He will, inner Shinku hissed out, so, he pointed the kunao towards Shinku. You better learn something, anything at all, that can help us survive. But where? I mean. Our sensei is a bastard, but he wasn't. But. If I hear another but or please stuttered out I'll rip my own tongue, inner Shinku hissed. You want to learn, then learn. You have a teacher, so ask him. You have to survive to Chiryunin, Shinku, his hand slammed against the glass. The glass cracked as blood began to drip down the knuckles of his inner self. We will survive, understood? Why yes. I can't hear you. Yes. Shinku snarled, pulling away his fist, with glass shards embedded in his knuckles. Wincing, he removed them one by one while clicking his tongue. The next morning, Shinku blearily opened his eyes to the sound of a dull thud outside his window. He opened it, just in time to receive a small pebble straight on the forehead which knocked him backwards with an ouch. Sorry. Naruko's voice reached his ears, really sorry. The girl entered his room as if she was the owner. You alright? Why yes, he mumbled, gazing at her strangely. Right, Naruko said, clapping her hands. I am still angry at you, Naruko pouted, but I'm willing to forget all about it. Now, are your parents at home? I need to steal you for the moment, you see. We're all having breakfast at Yuki-chan's house. Your parents are included, of course. Shinku blearily looked at her for a moment more. Wait. He blinked as his eyes fully opened the moment the implication sunk in. What? He croaked out. We're having breakfast at Yuki-chan's house. She excitedly gripped his hands. You'll see, Auntie Mikoto is really good, not like my mom, but she's a decent cook and you get to see Sasuke wearing an apron. I mean, who wouldn't want to see Yuki-chan wearing an apron? Naruko shot out of his room a moment later. OHI. Shin-chan's parents. We're going out for breakfast. Anyone home? You'll wake the neighbors. Shinku hissed as his tongue stuck to his throat. They're already out. Naruko frowned, before sighing. Really, she gripped onto Shinku. You're coming with me, Shin-chan. You clearly need a healthy breakfast. You know, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It was with those words that Shinku inwardly cursed as loud as he could. Breakfast at Sasuke's house meant the Uchiha district. The Uchiha home. The Uchiha's chief of the police home. It meant the second most powerful man of the most powerful clan in Konoha depending on sources, and if one was an Uchiha sympathizer or a Hyuga, one would be having breakfast at the same table as his wife, Sasuke, Naruko, and of course, breakfast was something done in families. The way Naruko had meant it. He was having breakfast with the chief of the police. He was having breakfast with the Hokage. He was having breakfast with their families. He felt extremely out of place, and so tiny and insignificant that if maybe someone took pity on him and had him leave, he'd actually be grateful. He hadn't even put on his flak jacket. He felt not only naked, but also extremely vulnerable without it. He was bunkered between Naruko and Sasuke, with Fu standing in front of them, literally surrounded as he felt the scrutiny of everyone else at the table, towards him. Oh, there was also their sensei. He was happily waving at him with his single visible eye while holding on a light chuckle. Wonderful. He wanted to scream. He wanted to scream. No need to be afraid, Shin-chan. Yuki-chan's father is. It's Sasuke. Sasuke's father shot straight back, sporting a glare that made Shinku freeze, after Sasuke Sarutobi. It's still a stupid name, Naruko replied uncaring. Yuki-chan is way better. The yondaime laughed nervously. Well said, clappers. It's Thunderstorm Dad. Naruko whined. Your parents couldn't make it, Shinku-kun? Kushina asked him, and he stiffly nodded. He actually would have loved, to the bottom of his heart, to go back on the bridge and laugh with Zabuza. He'd exchange such nice stories. He'd even love to be gutted, rather than standing another instant there. Why him? Why? They must truly love their work, Fugaku stated plainly. You already had breakfast then, dear. The soft voice of Fugaku's wife made him swallow nervously, as he shook his head. Oh, very well then, Mikoto said with a happy hum. It's nearly done anyway. Hey, where's Duckbutt's apron? Naruko shouted. I burned it, Dobe, Sasuke grumbled. Who would even want me to wear a pink apron with a yellow duck? Fu giggled. Ah, that's cute. If you wore that naked style while standing outside, I'm sure you would soon find out, Naruko replied with a wink. Minato groaned. I knew I shouldn't have left Jiraiya babysit. I knew I shouldn't have let Sasuke play with her, Fugaku joined in the groan. Fu inclined her head to the side. What? What's that about? At least someone here still has some decency for being of the fairer sex, Fugaku said, looking towards Fu. OHI, what's wrong you two prudes? Kushina yelled. We're talking of making a profit here, Kushina began to count with her fingers. If we sell the photos at 500 ryos each, after counting for development. Kushina-chan, Mikoto said with a bright and kind smile that terrorized Shinku to the depths of his core even if directed at Kushina, who froze too. You try and use my son as merchandise and I will, oh, better not say it while having breakfast. The woman brought a hand to her mouth and smiled, her eyes crinkling happily as she cocked her head to the side. By the way, Minato said, how was the mission? Kakashi hummed. It went well, sensei. Kakashi and I bullied Shin-chan throughout it all, Naruko pouted. He was very, very mean. Oh? How so? It was nothing, Shinku stuttered out, waving a hand in dismissal and then keeping his gaze down. Fu gazed at him, clearly worried as she bit down on her lips hard as if to refrain from saying something. Kakashi just kept on humming. Yep, we just had nice talks, eye-opening talks, the silver-haired Jounin nodded sagely. Wasn't there a no-mission talk during food times? It was abolished after the last one you went on that nearly got my daughter killed, Minato replied with a smile. If Mikato's smile had been terrifying, the one of the Yondaime felt on a completely different strength. Shinku began to consider the demon's Abusa a huggable body pillow, a comfortable body pillow. Naruko-chan was unharmed, Kakashi replied. Everyone was unharmed to some degree. I think I have an appointment I must be late for. He made Shinku act as if he were a Chiryunin. Sasuke shot straight back, and on sight there were 4 Kirigaku or swordsmen of the mist, 2 Chiryunin, and 1 Hunternin. The Uchiha boy narrowed his eyes. He disappeared for long lengths of time, and basically left it to us to deal with the troubles. There weren't any bandits, but Kiri seemed keen on starting something and they nearly got to blows with Shinku to boot, and... Breakfast is ready, Mikato stated plainly. I think we'll put the no-mission talk back on as a rule, or I might just murder Kakashi before the end of the hour. Kakashi, I smiled, can I make a run for it? Only if you let me stab you thrice first, Mikato replied sweetly. Breakfast wasn't like the one he cooked at home in a hurry. Eggs and toasts it was, actually prepared. Fish, rice, small-cut eggs, it meant waking up at 4 to start preparing it. The Yondaime and the chief of the police talked business. Kakashi every now and then interrupted them to give a point here or there. The 2 women spoke of cooking, and every now and then Kakashi interrupted once more to ask about this or that. Sasuke and Naruko spoke to one another with Fu intervening, and seemingly all 3 tried to rope Shinku into conversations, and when Kakashi tried to intervene they all glared at him with enough anger to shoo him back into talking about the proper way of cleaning blood out of an uniform with Kushina and Mikato. So, I think we'll be doing only D-ranks inside of Konoha now, Naruko mumbled. It would be way better. You know, get some rest, have some good ramen. Dope, you only think about ramen, Sasuke grumbled. I say we should find out about the Chiryunin exams and who our opponents are going to be. Fu pouted, I'm not going to participate in them, she looked downcast. But I'll be cheering for you, Shin-kun. Thanks, Shinku stuttered out, his cheeks heating up lightly. Naruko giggled with a half-depraved lecherous gaze. Sasuke coughed. We will need to train. Cheers can only go so far. Oh shush it, Yuki-chan. Rest and relaxation. Double airs. I say we should train more. We'll be up against older teams certainly, and what if those Kiri freaks decide to actually show up? OHI, Kushina said suddenly, who said you're going in the exams now? Kakashi, Sasuke replied crisply. Why not wait a few years? Mikato said, her voice jovial and her tone mirthful, as she sharpened a knife. Are they ready? Minato asked instead, eyeing Kakashi who simply smiled back. They were born ready, the silver-haired Jounin stated. I will deliver the report of the mission this afternoon, sensei. You'll agree with me wholeheartedly. Keep him in the room while he does that, Naruko mumbled, you'll want to hit him with something anyway. Oh? Can I come too, Hokage-sama? Mikato asked with her smile simply increasing in strength. Shinku was trembling like a leaf. The gaze wasn't directed at him, but he was still trembling. Hey, Auntie Mikato. Pipe down with the glare, you're scaring Shin-chan. Naruko exclaimed. It's alright Shin-chan. Auntie's really nice, she was a Jounin you know, but she forgets sometime to turn her glare off. I do not glare, Mikato replied. She then carefully walked behind Naruko, her eyes narrowing slightly when she realized Shinku tensed at her passage. She curled her lips slightly up as her tongue clicked once, startling the boy, before she went to ruffle Naruko's head. Right, Minato said suddenly. Before going on a mission, he sighed as he handed over the scroll to an eagerly waiting Kakashi who pouted like a child at the sight of the D-rank mark Shinku. The boy stood to attention, his back stiffening considerably more than before. You'll have to pass by the Yamanaka flower shop to talk with Inoichi. Hi, Minato smiled, and then gave a soft look to Naruko, who awkwardly nodded back to him. "I promise I won't burn it down like last time," she pouted. Who knew compost was explosive anyway? "It was classified an accident," Fugaku said crisply, "and you were let go because you were young, and Sasuke helped me light the fuse." Naruko nodded sagely. "And you were privately punished with no ramen for a year," she added, "and the light of the world died that day to be reborn 1 year later," she finished gravely. "Oh ramen, why are you so delicious?" "I was not going to say that," Fugaku hissed. Having finished breakfast, the 4 genin plus their jounin sensei headed out. "The mission for today is weeding a garden," Kakashi hummed. "Nothing that can't be done with a hefty dose of clones," he shrugged. "First stop, Yamanaka flower shop to leave Shinku-kun to get his brain analyzed." "We'll wait outside," Sasuke said. "If you don't come out in 5, we'll barge in with a squad, Shin-chan, don't worry," Naruko exclaimed. "It's going to be alright, yes?" Fu asked awkwardly. "It's just a flower shop." Shinku awkwardly smiled, before his throat clenched. I'm sorry about." "Ah, no need," Naruko shrugged. "It's all Kakashi and I's fault anyway." "Yuki-chan told me you really didn't have a choice," she turned thoughtful. "Next time though, I'm stopping you. Got that, Shin-chan?" "It's a promise." Shinku nodded, and then remained quiet as the flower shop came into view. It had large glass windows and a few flowers standing outside to catch the sun's rays, while the door was open with the sound of bustling coming from within. "Off you go," Kakashi hummed. Shinku hesitated for a second. Why did he feel afraid, and then stepped inside. The shop's air was slightly humid, water vapor surrounded the flowers as behind the counter a blonde-haired girl stood with a half-sleepy and half-annoyed look. "Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop," she said as soon as he entered. "Can I do something for you?" Is your father in?" "If there's a need for some bouquet or anything else, I'm even better than my father," the girl shot out with a smile, before frowning. "Wait, you're one of his patients, right?" He nodded awkwardly. "So you must be Harano-san." He nodded once more. "Oh," she blinked. "Wait. I remember you now." She clapped her hands together. "You were with Naruko's team." She cocked her head to the side. "That means, you're the dead last, right?" "Ah, yes," he ground out. "Is Sasuke-kun still hanging around that bitch?" The girl was suddenly beyond the counter, huffing as she pulled her blonde ponytail behind her shoulder. "I'm way prettier than her anyway, right?" Is your father?" "And frankly," she went on while ignoring him, "the girl has it easy. Daughter of the Yondaime, hero jailer of the Jinchuriki, she's practically going to become the next Hokage anyway." "I don't." "She's a spoiled princess, not like me who has to work at the shop from early morning," Ino continued. "I wonder when Sasuke-kun is going to realize that and leave her." "You'll tell me when that time comes, right, Hajino-kun?" "It's Harano," he mumbled. "Your father?" Yeah, alright, I see the bitch has her claws sunk in you too," she shrugged. "Dad. You have a screwed up patient." She yelled that out rudely, before returning to her post behind the counter. "Ino. How many times have I told you?" Inoichi came down, before holding up an awkward smile at the sight of Shinku. "Oh, well then, come on up, Harano-kun." Shinku swallowed nervously as he headed upstairs, passing by the counter and the glaring Ino. The office above had a desk, 2 chairs and a sofa standing near a window. There were many books on the shelves near the walls, and a few parchments stood scattered around in unruly piles. "Sit where you like," Inoichi said, gesturing to the room. Carefully, Shinku sat down on the chair, his hands gripping his knees with his gaze downcast. Now, Inoichi's voice was soft. "No need to think I'm your executioner." The man sat in front of him. "It's just a mere check. I'm going to show you some pictures, alright?" Shinku nodded. The first picture was of a Kunao. The second was of a Konoha shinobi, the third of an Iwagakuer shinobi, then a Tsunagakuer, a Kyumigakuer, and finally a Kurigakuer one. Then came the foreign protectors of the minor villages. A few actually puzzled him because he had never seen them before. One had the form of a star to begin with. How funny was that? Then Inoichi showed him the picture of a corpse, and Shinku turned green as he brought a hand to his mouth. So, the picture hastily disappeared. How was your last mission? Ah, hellish. Why was it hellish? Inoichi asked. His voice was soft and his tone even. There were circumstances. Inoichi turned thoughtful. Did you kill? Shinku closed his eyes, before grimacing. He nodded after a few seconds. What use was there in saying he hadn't? How did that make you feel? Horrible. Why did you have to kill? Shinku licked the top of his throat with his tongue, his mouth dry. It was an order. Didonti order, something that you won't do. Kakashi-sensei told me to choose who would kill the man. Do you think your teacher singled you out for a reason, Shinku-kun? Inoichi's voice was still soft. How could it be so soft? It was a mere whisper, but he did feel lulled. I don't know, he acquiesced. Maybe because I already killed? Maybe he didn't want to push it on the others. What do you mean? I'm the intruder, right? His voice cracked slightly. I'm not supposed to be in the team. I'm the dead last. Wouldn't it be better if someone else had been in it? Like, a clan children? Why did it have to be me? I don't have anything to offer to the team. You think your sensei is hazing you? Giving you tasks he wouldn't give to your other teammates? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe he just wants me to tell him no, but he told me, if I wanted to be a part of the team, he told me training would probably kill me, he told me, and I said yes. Isn't it my fault in the end? Take a deep breath now, Shinku-kun. Everything is alright, Inoichi acquiesced. Come on now, breathe deeply. Shinku breathed, clenching his knees tighter. Now, Inoichi remarked. Did you tell your parents about your first kill? No, he shot back immediately. They wouldn't understand. They're both ex-Chunin, right? Yes, but they never killed. They never told me they killed. They said they never had a mission like that. Were you expecting to have the same shinobi experience as them? Yes, Shinku mumbled. I did. Why did you choose to become a shinobi anyway, Shinku-kun? Inoichi asked, his voice light. Shinku closed his eyes. Running on the rooftops, he mumbled. I was roped in by a friend, and my parents wanted me to try anyway, he chuckled. But, running on rooftops seemed nice. I see, Inoichi hummed. Tell me, have you had any nightmares? No, he shook his head. I'm fine. That worried Inoichi, but he remained quiet. Very well then, the man smiled. I don't think there is anything to worry about. If you ever feel the need to talk, just come over at any time of the day. Thank you. We'll see each other again next month. Don't skip, or I'll come looking for you. Yes. Inoichi walked the boy out, and watched him leave with his team. Sighing, he returned inside. So, is he another screw case? Ino asked. He loved his daughter, but sometimes she had the same tact and grace of a rhino. I do not discuss patients' cases with you, Ino. Come on dad, she said then with pleading eyes, if he's a nut job it would be priceless. The spoiled princess being friend with a lunatic and. Ino, when are you going to bury the axe? Inoichi sighed. She's the one who has to say sorry first, Ino pouted, crossing her arms over her chest. By the way, can I go now? Lazy Guy and Fatty are probably at the training ground already. Inoichi grumbled, before nodding. As Ino left to deliver the juicy gossip to Ami who had returned from her C rank just the day before, Shinku found he was, for once, actually happy. They were weeding a garden. He wept of joy as he began the repetitive motion of gripping on the weeds and pulling them out, giggling as no kunao, trap, explosion, or enemy appeared. He was weeding a garden, and he loved every second of it. Nariko watched the scene from afar, before lowering her shoulders and sighing in defeat. All right, no clones, she brought both hands up in surrender, as Suzuki gave her a sort of look that went look at him. He's so happy. Fu giggled at the antics, before starting to pull out the weeds too. Kakashi flipped another page of Ika Ika. He had sent a written report to Sensei, hidden his porn in a safe place beneath the earth in a spot he alone knew existed, and had made sure to change the lock of his house during the night. He was safe. The next split second the Ika Ika he was holding burned down to ashes, as Kushina just so randomly dropped by. "Mom?" Naruko asked. "What is this about making a genin act like a Chiryunin, Kakashi-kun?" Shinku swallowed. Kakashi nervously laughed. Golden chakra chains slowly appeared around Kushina's body. They clinked and rattled like scary rattlesnakes. "Sensei certainly." Minato was busy holding back Mikoto, "considering you watched and did nothing when her son was impaled by needles to see how your genin would react." Kushina smiled brightly, inclining her head to the side. "As well as forcing your students to, once more, what did you write? Train under the pretense of a life or death situation, was it? Well, Kakashi-kun, let's train, shall we? I'm just going to kill you." "Databane." "Mom." Naruko squeaked once more. Then the ground trembled. "I think Mikoto managed to elude Minato," Kushina giggled. "Run Kakashi-kun, run." With a very masculine in Kakashi's opinion eep, the Jounin dashed away, soon followed by a red blur and a black blur. "Mother!" Sasuke let out a strangled sound as Mikoto pursued Kakashi. "Come back here, you rotten teacher!" Mikoto yelled. "Mother!" Sasuke exclaimed once more. "Have mercy!" Kakashi yelled. Yojao appeared in that moment, coughing lightly. "It seems Hatake-san forgot a few details in his report. I have done my utmost best to include them." She turned serious. "Where are Harano-kun and Fu-chan?" Both Naruko and Sasuke turned their necks sharply. Ignoring everything, the two aforementioned genin were happily weeding the garden away. "There is something wrong in you if you are happy while weeding a garden," Sasuke mumbled. "I think there's something wrong in general with not hearing the sounds of 3 jounin fighting, well, 2 fighting and 1 screaming in pain," Yojao corrected, gazing at the battle happening just a few meters away. That was the first happy Derank in Shinku's life. Ignoring the screams of pain from Kakashi, which were actually a nice soundtrack to the job, the mission was, overall, wonderful and easy to complete. Maybe the life-threatening situations were finally over. Maybe. Check the description for the links to the author.